Good afternoon. On behalf of the Commissioners, I welcome you. I call this meeting to order. We will have our roll call, please.
I understand, Mr. Chairman, that Mr. James is on his way.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now we will have our invocation by Dr. Johnson and our pledge by Reverend Hammond, or vice versa, whichever one you want to.
All right. Let us pray.
Tom, go ahead, Dave. Let's stand, please.
Let us pray. Oh, gracious God, our Father, we come again and thank you for another beautiful day. We pray that thy presence will be with us this evening as we go about the business of Pitt County. Bless us individually and collectively, our families and the citizens that we serve. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Let's face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Unless there's some additions or corrections to the agenda, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second.
Second.
Let's vote. We've got public hearings. Mr. Rhodes, I believe you're first. Sorry, we do not have enough chairs, but as we continue through the meeting, we will probably have some spaces for you to have a seat.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We have 3 public hearings tonight. The first one is for proposed amendments to the flood damage prevention ordinance. These amendments are primarily in response to some changes to our flood maps here in the county. You may be familiar that the state of North Carolina now has the responsibility that's been authorized through FEMA to update our maps here. And we went through a similar process last year for many of the maps on the western side of the county. And tonight we'll be dealing with 41 panels in the central and also eastern part of the county for updates. And this is good news for Pitt County in that these maps are now more detailed in nature. We have base flood elevations in areas that we didn't have before. And with this detail, some of the areas actually have been removed from the floodplain. So in particular, one area north of the river in the Grindle-Pocosin area, a significant portion of that has been removed from the 100-year floodplain. Also, as part of these amendments, there is a section that the state has requested that we include in our ordinance as well. As you know, we administer these regulations not only in the county's jurisdiction, but for 8 municipalities. The state has requested that we also put a section in the first section of statutory authorization to also indicate that we're handling that in the municipal areas. Other than that, in Section 7, we will be changing the effective date. These new panels have to be effective July the 7th of this year. And we have 2 sites in the ordinance that need to be changed. Also in Section 24, that effective date needs to be reflected as well. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we're ready for the public hearing tonight.
I declared the public hearing open. Do we have anyone signed up for that, Mr. Manager?
No, sir.
Anyone present that wants to speak to that issue that Mr. Rhodes just discussed? If not, then I declare the public hearing closed. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion? Not, let's vote. Thank you. Thank you. The next item will be turned over to Mr. Webb as Vice Chairman.
Phil, got anything you want to say on it?
Not much. We've talked about this before. It's the public hearing for Community Development Block Grant to provide sewer to this Kennewick Area Sanitary District. There are Andrew Parker with McDavid and Associates is here tonight, and several members of the district if you have questions. One thing I would point out is that Mr. James asked that the property owners be notified. They all were notified by mail.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Well, that would declare the public hearing open. Is anyone that wishes to speak on the issue? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Pleasure of the board.
I move that we accept this grant application.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, let's vote. Mr. Hammond?
David? David?
Mr. Hammond?
Need to vote.
Mr. Hammond? Need to vote.
Vote.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Now we move on to item number 3. Mr. Rhodes?
Also for consideration at a public hearing tonight is a conditional use permit request for solar energy facility. This is by Strata Solar LLC. And this, of course, this process, as you're familiar with, is a quasi-judicial procedure. And with that, there are several rules or guidelines that need to be adhered to. Folks wishing to speak to this will need to be placed under oath by the clerk in just a minute. And also, there are written findings of facts that are required as far as the decisions that are made here tonight. They can be appealed to Superior Court. With that, anyone wishing to speak should come forward now to be sworn in by the clerk. Some of the details for this particular conditional use permit. This is, again, a permit. As you remember last year, we added new language to our zoning ordinance for a new type of land use that's being requested here in the county. That is for solar farm or particularly solar energy facility. This particular one is located on Belvoir School Road, or is proposed to be located there. And as far as our comprehensive land use plan is concerned, it is in suburban residential. The map that's on the current screen will show the location of this tract. Just to orient you, this is Martin Luther King Boulevard, the bypass here, also Belvoir School Road. This will show a little bit more clearly with some of the other landmarks as far as the land uses. There are several subdivisions on the north side of Belvoir School Road. This is Belvoir School itself here in the blue. The two brown areas here, one is a substation for Greenville Utilities, the other is a cell tower site. Some of the details for the site that's being considered tonight, again, a small portion of it is north of Belvoir School Road. That's going to be for staging area. The remainder of it is primarily set aside for the structures that will be oriented toward to collect the solar energy from the sun on the remainder of the site. With that, again, on the top left corner, you can see the staging area. This is north of Belvoir School Road, small area where they'll store materials while the construction's underway. A portion of that is wooded. The larger site on the south side of Belvoir School Road, some 100 acres, as you can see, are bounded by the red line here. Also, there are some existing vegetative areas in this on this tract, and that should be retained. There are also other screening requirements on certain portions of the property as well. Areas that are within the boundary to a certain extent will be cleared for the panels to be installed. And you can see for the majority of the site, there will be panels in this area that's colored in the salmon color here. We do designate areas or wanted to make you aware of areas where the inverters will be installed. These types of facilities do have a small amount of noise associated with them, so the setbacks are a little bit larger than some of the other areas, and those are taken into account as part of the site plan review. And as I mentioned before, the gray area here on the bottom right is an existing Greenville Utilities substation, electrical substation. The portion that we added to our zoning ordinance last year, again for the solar farms, had a number of setbacks that are included, and also a maximum height of the equipment cannot exceed 25 feet. There are other requirements. As I mentioned, the site plan, we did have some conditions that need to be met for the site plan, and a revised one is required as part of this process. A number of other requirements, fencing and screening requirements, and of course a decommissioning plan is required as well. As part of any conditional use permit consideration, the board must deny the permit if it concludes that the development as proposed at the hearing and at its proposed location, more probably than not, number one, will materially endanger the public health or safety. As far as our comments there, we believe that it will not produce any harmful emissions, and it will be screened from the adjacent properties as well. And therefore, will not produce a danger to public health. Also, should consider, will it substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting properties? We feel like the adjacent properties and the current uses, primarily agricultural, with limited residential, will not be devalued in this process. Is it in harmony with the area? Again, with some of the setback requirements and other development standards, we feel like it will be. And is it in conformity with the land use plan and the thoroughfare plan and other plans? We believe that it is. So with that, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends two motions tonight. One, to acknowledge that the conditional use permit application is complete. The other is to approve the conditional use permit subject to a number of conditions that are included in your agenda, including a revised site plan. And with that, we're ready for the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. James. I declare the public hearing open. We have some people signed up for that. Mr. Elliott, you want to call them out?
Sure. If Rich Kirkland will come forward first, please. Just provide us your name and address for the record.
If I may, I'm Catherine Ross with Parker Poe. I'm an attorney that represents Strata Solar. Mr. Kirkland is our expert real estate witness, and Mr. Neiman, who's also signed up, is our expert civil engineer witness for this public hearing. With the council's permission, I would do a brief opening and present them as witnesses to provide support for the findings of fact you need to make.
Do you have anything in addition to what Mr. Rose just said that would be for this?
Yes, sir.
Do you want to make a presentation in addition to Mr. Rose?
Yes, sir.
All right, go forward.
Great. As I said, I'm Catherine Ross. My address for the record is 150 Fayetteville Street, Raleigh, North Carolina, with Parker, Poe, Adams, and Bernstein. I'm here tonight representing Strata for the conditional use permit that Mr. Rose just explained. As the applicant, we feel we have the burden to provide you evidence as to the findings of facts, and that the development will not materially injure adjoining property values, will be in conformance with your land use plan and your ordinance, and will not pose any issues to public health, safety, and welfare. We'll be very brief. As I said, Mr. Neiman is a civil engineer. I would present him to you as an expert in the construction of solar farms and as a licensed North Carolina civil engineer, and have him come up and testify, describing to you the construction process and the lack of any sound, odor, noise, or other issues with this type of development.
We've had our planner and Mr. Rose to go through all of that. He's made his submission to us tonight to that. I think that's sufficient. Does the board want any further information on that? If not, then thank you.
Okay. I would also have the real estate engineer that the real estate expert that we have is, under North Carolina statute, the only competent evidence that come in is a person qualified as an expert. May I?
Please.
If I could just have Mr. Kirkland state his name for the record, and if you would then also just go straight into briefly describing your professional opinion, we'll put the rest in the written record with your permission.
Yes, go forward.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Rich Kirkland. I'm a commercial appraiser, certified general in North Carolina, MAI designation. My business address is 5029 Hilltop Needmore Road, Fuquay, Varina. I was asked to look at whether or not this was going to have an impact on property values nearby. I've done research looking through the Appraisal Institute, looked at research studies, and I've visited over 30 different solar farms. The way that you go about this, the textbook answer is you look at matched pairs analysis. You look at property that's next to a solar farm, another one that's not next to a solar farm, and see if everything else is identical, you see if there's any changes with just that solar farm being the only difference. I looked at a solar farm in Goldsboro, the AM Best Solar Farm. It actually has a new phase of a subdivision being developed adjoining it. Has lots that back up to the solar farm and lots that don't back up to the solar farm. They're selling the same floor plans, same home plans, same prices, same price per square foot for everything going on in the neighborhood. The developer sees no impact on their marketing plan or anything going with that. And there's been 5 sales of homes that back up to that in 2013. I've knocked on doors. I've talked with the folks there. They had no concerns with the solar farm. The data shows no difference in what they're paying versus the people down the street. So based on that, this is a very good example of match pair analysis. It shows a number of different ways to look at the data, and it all shows that there's no impact. There's additional stuff in my file that shows additional match pairs I've looked at, but that was the best one. It is my professional opinion that the proposed solar farm will have no impact on the adjoining property values. And it's a further opinion of mine, a professional opinion, is that it's going to be in harmony with the area, that this is the type of place you would find these. They're generally being located in these sort of transition areas between residential and agricultural areas, because that's where you have demand for the power, but also you've got the open space to put the panels.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions from the board? Not. All right, Ms. Jane.
All right, what is the oldest one in North Carolina pertaining to the solar system that you're talking about with the planet?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The oldest, it's been there the longest.
I'm not sure the answer to that. I know that I've visited one that's about 3 years old, as far as these larger 40-acre tracts, but that's, as far as the ones I've visited, that would be about 3 years.
I think, Mr. Chairman, that's the main concern that I have had with people. How is it going to affect my land next to me? And I don't know. I don't know that, but I do know, of course, I own land. And I would be concerned if I was planning on developing, if it's out in a rural area, I don't think it'd have an effect much. But if it's around the city of Greenville or something like that, then it could very easily affect the value of it. Of course, you know that as well as I do.
Any further questions? If not, thank you. And Mr. Elliott, who's your next one?
Okay, we had Catherine Ross and Brent Newman. I think they were all part of it.
I believe that we are always Strata Solar, and I believe that's it. I would introduce for the record Mr. Kirkland's report.
Very good.
If I may, by handing it.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. That's all we have.
None of those names you had at present?
That's all we have for this public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there anyone in the audience that desires to speak for or against this at this time? If not, then I declare the public hearing closed. On page 11 of the agenda for the commissioners, what's the pleasure? Ms. Ward?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we accept the recommendations 1 and 2. One is to acknowledge the application, and the other is to approve the conditional use permit subject to the development standards.
Got a motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, you ready to vote?
We will include all of the requisite findings in those, Mr. Chairman, with your permission.
True, correct.
Are we given complete, saying approving this, Mr. Chairman, or would it come back, Mr. Manager, again?
No, this is complete
This is
approval.
it.
This is it.
I vote for it, but I don't mess it up.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the fourth one on the agenda, Wanda?
Good
Good evening. We have discussed this project before. With the dissolution of the region, there are funds available to borrow at no interest. The Development Commission proposes to borrow those funds to utilize on behalf of Genome ID Group for their expansion. The period is for 4.5 years. The Development Commission will offer the surety for that, should that become necessary, though we do not expect that it will.
All right, is that it for you?
That's it, unless you
All
have
right.
some questions.
I declare the public hearing open. Is there any pros or cons at this time as to this issue?
Mr. Chairman, nobody has signed up to speak at this time.
All right. Anyone present that now would like to speak? If not, I declare the public hearing closed. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second it.
Thank you, Wanda.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Manager, I believe you're up next.
Yes, sir. Next, under presentation, we have recognition of local Eagle Scouts. And Mr. Chairman, if you and I can go down, we will make this presentation. The Pitt County Board of Commissioners tonight would like to recognize, we actually have 3 on the agenda. I know one is here, Mr. Lassiter, and I believe there might be one other one. Mr. Overby could not make it, but if Everett Wilson Lassiter and his family will come forward, we'd like to publicly recognize you. And basically, the Board of County Commissioners are recognizing Boy Scouts within Pitt County who have gone on to achieve the prestigious rank of Eagle Scout. So for Mr. Lassiter here, we have a certificate framed for you, and I'll read this, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
It says, certificate of appreciation is awarded to Everett Wilson Lassiter for achieving the Eagle Scout Award for his project. It was a room ventilation project at the 3rd Street School Community Center here in Greenville, North Carolina. This is presented by the Pitt County Board of Commissioners on this 24th day of March, 2014, signed by our chairman, Mark W. Owens, Jr. Congratulations.
What you want to tell us, son? Sir?
Is there anything you can say?
Yeah, say something.
How proud you are of your mom and daddy.
Oh, yeah. Proud of the Boy Scouts. I could get his great award.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Is Ramagia James DeVenti here tonight? If not, we will make sure he gets this. That's all we have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we send a letter of recognition to these fine young men.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Garris. Motion made and second. Ready to vote? Thank you. All right, Mr. Manager.
Next, we have a report from Earl Merritt, who is our interim Department of Social Services Director. Mr. Merritt has been with Pitt County for almost 2 months now and is serving as our interim basis while the DSS Board does an advertising and recruitment for a permanent director. He would like to come before you tonight and make a report regarding the staffing needs of the department. This is kind of a little bit of a precursor to his budget request, but felt like it was important for you to hear his analysis on the staffing needs. Obviously, the board and the county has heard a lot about the NC FAST compliance and maybe in some cases non-compliance. So, Mr. Merritt.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We have been studying productivity since shortly after I came here. I think you have this report here that shows that we had 2,372 pending applications in February the 17th. For a total of 4,581. The new ones we received between February 17th and March the 19th was 1,436. We processed for that period 4,718. Average number of reviews, applications processed per worker, 7863. And so the total number of reviews and applications left to be processed was 3,671. It would take 47 more people to be able to do that. I am recommending that you hire an additional 30 income maintenance caseworkers. We've been working on that and different ways to fund that. The Medicaid NC FAST money is $75.25. We've also worked with the community college to possibly do a course for us, be about a week or a little more than a week. They would do profile testing to see people who would be good at it, and then we could get some workforce investment funds monies at $75.25 to pay for part of the people who were eligible for that. Obviously, the amount of staff we have now can't do it. They've banked 39,006 overtime hours since we've been starting and doing these federally mandated F&S Food Nutrition Services applications. I handed out, the possible funding and the possible cost. We also would like to increase capacity, and we've done some work with that too. We've been using laptops to train and retrain workers that were struggling, train new workers when we got in there. We've also worked with people doing some work from home, taking them home and working with them from home, and they've been doing reviews, and they've been twice as productive. We're also looking at the people who fall below the mean number of applications or reviews each day, and we have a process set up to retrain them, and it's been my experience that through repetition they increase their productivity pretty drastically. We would really like to start 12 this year if that was at all possible, and go ahead and get that starting. Ms. Paramore from Pitt Community College seems to think that she can have the course up and running in the first part of April. We've been using Vanguard and overtime to try to make to meet the deadlines. We had 1,354 cases January the 22nd. We had 21 this morning untimely. Over half of them were no longer eligible, or they were hung up in the system, and we're constantly in communication with NC FAST daily. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Elliott, do you want to respond to that?
No, other than just to say that his request for 12 positions between now and June 30th, I will work with Mr. Merritt in terms of using the allocation possibly of lap salary. Otherwise, the request for the additional positions are really a July 1 issue that you'll hear from in budget workshops. I think the important thing to take away is that it is 75% non-county money for the positions. That's the good news. He's one of the few departments that can come forward and make a request that it's that much for only 25% local funds. So we'll work with him to try to render an appropriate recommendation in the budget.
Any comments from the commissioners at this time, Mr. Webb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where it says eligible, is that guaranteed, or does that just mean we have to apply for the 50%, the 75% to get it back?
So, the people who go into the program and that we take for the Workforce Investment Act have to be eligible.
Okay.
The NC FAST is for work that's done in NC FAST Medicaid. So that's $75.25 for that. Anybody else would be 50-50.
But that's what we would definitely get back for the.
One of the three, yes.
Okay. And
two. Well.
And so if we get all of these people, where are we going to put them?
Well, that is a question. We would double up the review people because they don't have as much face-to-face contact. I would recommend that you look at the possibility of some people working from home. You can measure their productivity from home. You could send laptops home with them, send hotspots with them. You can measure what they're doing. They do the same work from home as they do from elsewhere. And then there may be some additional space needed too. I would recommend that if you were to do the 30 positions, that you would bring them on 12 in 3 different segments, so it wouldn't disrupt the whole work that they're trying to do over there, trying to train people.
And, you know, I still get calls about people that aren't receiving food stamps.
Yes, sir, and those 2 that you got sent today are already getting benefits.
Excellent.
They
Okay.
have their benefits.
Good. And I stopped by there not too long ago. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but I took a little quick tour of the place. And the Medicaid backlog, I saw the room, and it's mind-boggling that how we're ever going to meet this April 1st deadline. I understand that's why we need the positions. But even if we hired them all today, are we going to be able to meet that deadline?
I'm very concerned about that as well, very concerned. And the state has been having serious problems across the state getting eligibility determined, and then having that system talk to the NC Tracks program that pays for it, and providers not providing services. And there are some real emergencies out there that haven't been getting served. The biggest problem right now is in the pilot county programs because they have hard launched and turned the eligibility information system, which is the old Medicaid system that we used to use, off. We have just received permission from the federal government to stay in the old eligibility information system until through December. So that should solve part of the problem. But the other part of the problem is that they delayed doing reviews. You take an application, then 6 months later you review to see if the people are still eligible. They delayed January and February and decided we would do it in March and April. Used to we had to do 1 thing to a review. Now we will have to do 4 things, and we have twice as many to do, so that will be 8 things. Yes, I am very concerned about it. We have been using a temporary agency to some extent, but there's no way that will
So you don't think we'll make the April 1st deadline? Is that maybe?
I don't know how, but
Okay.
we will try.
And
let me say about the staff, though. They have worked overtime. As I said, they've got 39,000 overtime hours here. They've made tremendous progress. They've worked really hard and really smart, too. We've divided up between applications and reviews and customer service. Many people are working on weekends, working whenever they can to do it. And I couldn't be more impressed with the progress of the staff over there.
Well,
we are taking those calls you're talking about daily. I'm taking them daily and referring them over there. And just about every day, they're resolved.
Every staff member I came across had their nose down, working hard. What I couldn't find was management. And no one really seemed to know where they were. And that was a problem prior to your arrival. And it doesn't seem much of that has changed. You know,
I had an answer for that for you. We were having a supervisors meeting when you came through, and we were all in their meeting when you came through.
I hope so. But this has been an issue since prior to your arrival, like I said, and it seems like the same people that were doing the same kind of lackadaisical work are still doing the same kind of lackadaisical work in the upper management parts of it. And
I have to disagree.
Well, you're allowed to disagree. I'm just telling you what my opinion is. And it's not just in this section of it. There's issues all throughout that department. When you've got the adoption side, and this, I know I emailed about one case today, but it's not just that person that I hear from when they're having issues getting kids adopted out in a timely manner to good families. And we've got issues in CPS where they're putting cases as neglect cases that are obvious abuse cases, and they're not getting reported over to law enforcement. And I think we're really opening ourselves up to some issues. And then when you look at the side of it where they're taking kids out of homes, they're putting them in expensive group homes versus using a less expensive foster care system for temporary thing. I mean, there's just that. This started before you got here. I'm at the end of my rope with this department, though, honestly, and I'm waiting on. I know we got a new director coming, but I swear, if I smell any kind of cronyism in that, and that's not you choosing, that's that board, I'm going to bust a spring. I've had it with mismanagement in government, and we need to keep a very close eye on this department, because there's somewhat, not just county money, but including federal and state dollars, somewhere around $300 million coming through there, and I'm very concerned about it. I've lost confidence in the department as a whole, and we need to get that on track. And I know that we're up against these hard deadlines with Medicaid and food stamps, but we also have to make sure that we don't ignore the rest of it all the way through. And there needs to be a serious look at the structure and the rank and the file of that department, because it is not performing. That's all I've got, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cash?
Yes, I just wanted to make one observation. If I understand your sheet here, the net impact to the county for what you are asking for is going to be $378,000. The federal, it would be the $765,000, which would be their prorated part.
Yes.
But we would have to increase our dollars by $378,000 in order to do this.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Coles?
Back in November, I met with Department of Social Services along with several of the staff members. And one of the questions that I had asked, actually, is I had asked it in emails, and it led to this little sub-meeting, if you like. I asked of the money, a little bit under $9 million that we currently give to the Department of Social Services, how much of that, where does it all go? And the answer came back in a series of emails prior to the meeting, and then when we got in the meeting and I pressed them for where does the balance go, the balance being $5.1 million, that they could not explain where it goes. Now, I know that by the state law that we're required to match anything in order to maximize monies from the federal government. I was a little bit miffed the last time, I think I might have been the lone dissenter in it, that we were paying for overtime for something that should have been done by the Department of Social Services to begin with. Now, back in November, the answer to my question was that there's 227 people working for the department. It would seem to me that somehow you could shuffle people around. The fact that many things were not even started until October at the earliest, and probably more likely November, troubled me and annoyed me, and I brought that up or spoke on it several times. And I know you're new and catching a lot of wrath from us, and it's not directed at you, but several of us are concerned about this. The fact is that when you're looking here at another almost $400,000, and you can't explain to me where $5.1 million of the money that we're already giving you goes, why would we want to give you more? And the fact that you can leverage the thing by saying, well, we get so many dollars back from the federal government, and oh, by the way, now you county by state law are mandated to support this, that bothers me as well. So the other thing is that looking at this, you're saying 12 positions. Let's say we did something for the 12 positions, and then next year, starting in June, you want 31 positions. Is that 12 part of that 31? Or is that
part of the 31?
That is part of the 31. Okay, so that means that, assuming that there's been same number of people there, you're going to take the department to 258 people if we were to agree to this.
Yes, sir.
Okay, brace yourself at budget time.
Mr. James, had you finished, Tom?
Yes, I'm finished. Thank you.
I don't quite understand what's going on, and I'm on the Social Service Board, as you know, and I ask a lot of questions, as you know. When you came here approximately 1 month ago, I asked you, how was everything doing? You know what your answer was?
They're working hard and they're making progress.
That's right. Nothing was mentioned. I suggest that Commissioner Well be put on this committee with that. I think he's going to learn something.
Be happy.
Really. I would put you on it right now, this minute.
Volunteer.
But Fast Fire is prepared for one thing, and that is crossover. Am I not right? Those that have been doing for food stamps are now learning to do with the Medicaid.
Yes, sir, we're backing up a little bit on that.
All right, but that is the state law, that these people be able to work from food stamps to DAP. so that we won't have to hire all these people. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Mr. Manager, you've been at all the meetings. Every one of them, just like I have.
Theoretically, NC Fast was supposed to allow county DSS departments to employ less people to get the job done because there was cross-training the positions.
That's right.
Honestly, the state, all 100 counties are not there yet. The progress they thought they'd make, they have not made to date. They're still having issues. The state and counties are having issues implementing the modules of NC Fast, and the dates, the April 1st date for Medicaid that Mr. Merritt is talking about. It's just not Pitt County, it's all counties in North Carolina are struggling. And part of the problem that the chairman had just asked me, I don't want to steal his thunder, but he just asked me how many positions in this department we have eliminated over the last 4 or 5 years during the recession. As the board recalls, and the public maybe as well, Pitt County took the stance that we did not want to furlough or lay employees off. So at budget time, in all the departments, if you had vacant positions, basically for the most part, those positions were eliminated. DSS was a department that unfortunately suffered the loss of probably cumulatively 20, 25 positions, maybe Florida, would you, thereabouts. So, I mean, we've been kind of our own worst enemy in that respect, but again, we were trying to protect the existing workforce across all the departments of the county. So now we're kind of in a catch-up mode. Not only we try to respond to the demands of NC Fast, which is the new computer system that enables DSS to respond to the public instead of through a number of different venues and computer systems. It's one centralized computer system that handles food stamps, Medicaid, Work First, all the different components and divisions of DSS. Sorry.
I thought 3 months ago, this board furnished money for overtime pay, did we not?
8 of you did.
Huh?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
8 of you did.
8 of us did, one did.
If the employees are not paid overtime pay, they earn comp time hours.
Right.
Which then they're not paid until they leave the county's employment. They're just hours that are kind of like vacation hours that they're banked until they're able to take those hours off.
You know, we're going to get back to this later on, and I apologize to you for you being attacked tonight if that's the mode that you took it. But do not take it in that way. But I do want to say one or two things. When you've got mandates from the Fed, and I've said this all along with the problems that we've had out in that particular agency, with the mandates you had from the federal government, the mandates you had from state government, and we too were responsible, Eugene. We took away those 25 or 30 people so they could not do the work. But that's not, and I just wanted to get back so that I think you've done a good job since you've been here. You brought us what we need to work with, and thank you, sir. Any more questions? If not, we'll go on to the next matter.
Could I say one more thing?
No, sir, but go ahead.
The capacity for all 100 county departments of social services is not sufficient to do the work right now. It could be when, I think the implementation was unrealistic. I was on the committees when they did it, and I told them it was unrealistic. It will take some years to get it where it works appropriately. If it works appropriately, then maybe one person will be able to do one application for all programs when they come in. It is not there yet. And
3 years.
And for these people to even come close to getting the work done, they're going to need help.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. All right, Dr. Alice.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your important agenda to put the animals back on. I'll be brief, and thank you again very much. I have some slides and presentation. It'll come up. You have a packet in front of you. It's got the slides. It also has an interesting article from a law review about some of the issues facing the county and the legal ramifications and how they're solved. There's also in there a petition. Thank you very much. There's a petition that we put out last week for a global look at animal control. We got about 500 signatures or more. I'd like to present that to the commissioners if it's possible. And again, thank you very much. My name is Ron Allison. I'm previous chairman of the Animal Control Advisory Board. I'm also president of the Humane Society, but I'm speaking as a taxpayer tonight. So animal control is a large issue, and many people are viewing this as an important issue, and many are here tonight, and there'll be opportunity for them to speak as well. but we think in an educated society that animal control and animal welfare are interrelated. We think there's significant ramifications for human health. We don't want to see animal bites. We don't want to see rabies. We don't want to see animals injured. So it's both humans and animals that animal control affects. And without appropriate ordinances and the teeth to implement those ordinances, we don't think you're going to get anywhere in Pitt County further than where you are today. And we're advocating that we move forward. So we're looking at a large number of things that animal control does, and several of these things are done extraordinarily well in Pitt County. And we would be very proud if Pitt County became a leader for North Carolina, if not the United States, to adopt many of these items, to enforce them and regulate them and do the right job, because it's all by funding and regulation. Some of this is done right now, but some of it is not. Currently, you have great success in Pitt County based on what you commissioners and your predecessors have done in terms of humane euthanasia. You no longer use a gas chamber. You're using a much more cost-effective means of euthanasia. By mandatory spay-neuter, you've decreased the number of animals in Pitt County. You've done a tremendous job. And one of the things that you should also be made aware of, and I'm sure you are, is that you have a very successful shelter, which has a wonderful level of adoptions. A decade ago, almost every animal who was brought to that shelter died. Now over half those animals are finding loving homes. And what we're concerned about is that if you are to change some of the ways that you're pursuing animal control in Pitt County, then what you're going to have is a shelter that's really not doing adoptions, mostly for death, and that's going to affect the way the citizens perceive what is going on. People right now are volunteering a lot of hours at the shelter. People see an animal on the side of the road, they'll pick it up, they'll help the county that way. But if they feel that that shelter is nothing more than a death sentence, you'll probably see a lot less volunteering and a lot less public support. And you have a tremendous shelter operator right now, Michelle Wiley, with her staff, who's just doing wonderful work. We want to help them do better things. One of the things is a group of regulations that really need to be brought into the mainframe of Pitt County. This is animals running at large, which we've discussed here and is an issue. An associated issue with that is 24/7 tethering of these animals, because you really don't want to just take an animal that's roaming, put them on a chain, and have them bite that way. Both of those animals, running at large, tethered animals, they're danger to other animals, to themselves, to the community. And where are these animals coming from? A lot of them are coming from unrestricted breeding. So this combination of unrestricted breeding, animals running at large, excessive tethering, are causing a lot of the grief and the cost to the taxpayers in Pitt County. And if you can create some regulation and enforce it, you can make a tremendous change in Pitt County very, very quickly, because if you just take one or the other of these things, you're going to have animal control officers who are probably going to just burn out, and you're going to have taxpayers asking, why are we just killing animals and not accomplishing what we used to do in Pitt County? So what we're proposing to you to think about and maybe bring to the Animal Control Advisory Board again are a combination of solutions that are probably cost-effective, but will have a cost, and we'll show you in a moment how we can pay for that. But we don't want these running at large animals. These are very dangerous animals to themselves, to the population, to property. We don't want to see that. And that a lot of those roaming animals are where your costs are in animal control. You also have these tethered animals that are very dangerous. So we don't want to see a shift from roaming animals to dangerous tethering animals. We want both of those addressed at the same time. We want to also look at where these animals are coming from, and they're coming from unregulated breeding. People breed animals. That's a choice that they make. You hope and expect that they'll find homes for those animals, but right now, if those animals are not found homes for, many are brought to the animal shelter for euthanasia. That costs the taxpayer money. Others are just released to roam. That costs the taxpayers money as well. So we're asking to look at regulation of breeding, not eliminate it, just to regulate it. And we feel that the way to pay for this and the way to do it appropriately is with animal licenses. If you have animal licenses, you'll have a funding source, and animal licenses will also allow the animal control officers to inspect and pursue abuse. Right now, animal control is hamstrung by not being able to investigate unless it's called in. By having an appropriate license, you're going to allow animal control to do its job appropriately, and it's going to make for a safer Pitt County. The key to this license is that you want to have a differential fee between spayed and neutered animals and unspayed, unneutered animals, the fertile animals. The spayed and neutered animals are generally kept on property, they're not roaming, they're not reproducing, they're not really costing the county money. It's the fertile animals, the roaming animals, those are the ones that are costing a lot of money, and those are the ones that need to be paid for by someone, most likely the owners of those animals. Just as an example, statistically, about 60% of individuals or households in Pitt County have an animal. So if you take 170,000 people as a household, it could be a different number. 60% of them, 100,000 people have an animal in their house or in their possession. If you make a small fee for licensure of, let's say, $10, and half of those individuals will pay, and half will pay because they know this money is going to help animal control and improve facilities in the county, you'll have $500,000 that you don't have right now, and that will help pay for additional workspace and additional full-time employees and many, many other things, as I'll show you. But there is a revenue source in most of the country by this licensing fee. And again, nobody really likes fees or licenses or anything like that, but when I drive my car, I have a license. When a dog or a cat is owned properly, there should be a license. Same concept in many respects. And again, the idea here is a differential fee. The animals that are causing you the grief, that are costing the county money, they're more expensive to keep than the animals that are spayed and neutered. When you look at these proposed fines, we're looking at returning spayed and neutered dogs. We don't want to really charge the public too much for somebody who's lost their dog. What we do want to do is we want to make it expensive for somebody who has an unlicensed and fertile animal. We want to make them pay and make them think this is not right to have a roaming dog and make them pay to get their animal back. Again, you don't want somebody to tether an animal improperly. You give them a solid fine. And again, the most important part, perhaps, is that you really don't want backyard breeders and puppy mills in Pitt County. You don't want all these excess animals that nobody has a home for that are just put onto the county payroll in terms of euthanasia and animal control officer time. So you want to put in that if you're breeding an animal and you don't want to have a license and you're caught, you're going to pay a lot of money. And that will prevent, or at least give some teeth to minimizing puppy mills in Pitt County. There are experts on this, national experts have looked at this, and they've looked at licensing, and they've said that if you give it a license, and you have a license differential between spayed and neutered and unspayed, unneutered animals, you'll see a giant decrease in the number of animals in the county, and you'll have an improved health in the county. The American Veterinary Association also looks at this differential fee as an incentive for responsible pet ownership. So this is what some of the national experts are looking at. What do they say about spay-neuter? The Veterinary Medical Association, the spay-neuter decreases the number of animals, it decreases the roaming animals, it decreases the vicious animals. The Humane Association reports that most of the fatal dog attacks are not neutered, they're male, they're roaming, they're tethered. So if you do a lot of the things that you already have in place, but just put some teeth into it and create some appropriate legislation, you could make a great benefit right now to the citizens and the animals of Pitt County. In North Carolina, some of the municipalities have already done this. In Laurinburg, they put a differential spay-neuter versus unspay-neuter license fee. They found a very, very big difference in the number of these animals that are roaming and overpopulating. Buncombe County, again, a differential licensing fee. They found a very big impact, and they were able to pay for a lot of the things that they couldn't pay for previously. And the North Carolina Veterinary Medical Association says it's the right thing to do. It's a better pet. One of the other things that might be considered is that there's no lost and found, centralized lost and found in Pitt County. There are at least 9 holding areas that these animals can be held at. There's a very low chance that if you lose your pet, you're going to find it in Pitt County. It would be very nice if the commissioners could create a centralized database, centralized website, or at least work with companies that provide this so that a citizen who loses their animal, this can be found. Right now, many of your lost animals are being euthanized, unfortunately. There's another thing to consider as well is education. People really don't understand why pet overpopulation is so bad. They don't necessarily understand why roaming dogs are so bad. Back in the day when there was very little population, maybe a roaming animal wasn't as bad as it is today with all the bicyclists and walkers and whatnot, but it's a different world, and a little bit of education could probably go a long way, particularly in terms of future costs. So what can we do? There are plenty of people in Pitt County who want to help. I speak not necessarily for the Humane Society, but the Humane Society is quite interested in helping and partnering. We can do a lot of adoptions. We have a facility. We could help the county. If the county facility were more for lost animals, roaming animals, then perhaps the Humane Society facility could bring up for the adoptions, that there would be no loss in the number of adoption cells in the county. We can help with the lost and found. We can help with humane education. I would urge you to remember that there's mandatory spay-neuter from your predecessors on the council. That's helped already. Please don't lose sight of that. Microchipping animals is a very, very simple way to return animals to their lost owner, but it's also a very simple way to find out who's a repeat offender in terms of roaming animals. And there's a working group, I hope, that will continue with all the different animal control associations in Pitt County of all the municipalities so that they would work on the same page. Perhaps the commissioners can help ensure that. So to summarize it, I would hope that you would build on the success that you have. You really need something that looks at roaming, tethered, and unfixed animals. You can pay for this by a licensing fee, particularly a differential licensing fee. The spayed, neutered animals are not the ones that are costing the taxpayer money. The spayed and neutered animals are owned by people who would gladly pay a licensing fee if they knew it was increase animal welfare in Pitt County. They would gladly do it. If you can create regulations with a bite, you'll see changes dramatically. If you create a central lost and found, you'd be helping a lot of animals and owners in Pitt County. And there are many people out there who would like to partner with you, particularly the Humane Society, because we have a facility that we think would help in the near future, not the distant future. So on behalf of everyone I might represent, I would ask the commissioners to consider what I've said and perhaps let the Animal Control Advisory Board review it and bring back some recommendations to you for immediate action. I thank you for your time, and I truly appreciate it.
Dr. Allison, on behalf of the board, we want to thank you for all the work that you've done and that you have given past and present, and we hope looking forward to the future. We will certainly take the presentation that you presented to us, also the package that you gave us, also the petitions that you gave us, and incorporate that into the process that we're undertaking to solve a problem which we acknowledge came to a point of being severe, and to solve a problem that for the safety of the people of this county, and that's what we want to do. Now, is there any question from any commission that you'd like to add at this time? All right, we'll start on this side. Start down here with Dave.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask Doctor, I heard him say for us to not eliminate breeding, but to regulate it. How do you say we go about doing that?
Well, you do a differential license fee because the spayed, neutered animals, they're not reproducing, they're not necessarily roaming.
Right.
The animals that animal control is going after are these puppy mills and things like that. So what you're going to say to somebody who wants to breed an animal, you can be a responsible breeder, buy this license. That means we're going to inspect you, maybe, but you're contributing to a better level of animal control in the county. Somebody who doesn't want to do that most likely has some sort of breeding facility that they don't want anybody to see. So you're not eliminating it. You're just saying you're going to pay a little bit more because that's what it's costing the county a little bit more. You're going to allow us to come in and inspect you. And if you've decided to violate the law by ignoring all these new rules and regulations, then we're going to fine you just a very large amount of money and put you out of business. So it's not eliminating things that competent, good people are doing. It's putting some more thought into the people who might just say, hey, I'm going to breed my dog, make some money, and if I can't sell all the animals, I'm just going to dump them on the side of the road or bring them to the shelter where the taxpayer is going to pay about $100 a head to put them to sleep.
Tom?
I've got a question.
All right, Mr. James.
All right, in Pitt County, you have the city of Greenville and all of your towns that have their own dog ordinance. How can this board put a tax? Why isn't Greenville involved? They're the ones that's going to have to put the tax on it.
Well, Commissioner, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I know.
And I think, since you know you're right,
yeah,
that it will come to the commissioners, such as yourself, to create a working group where everybody's going to be on the same page, not as this is my job, my property, this is your job, your property. And as it becomes one entity, again, the municipalities have the say within their municipality, but if it's a uniform rule and regulation, then why wouldn't it work together, and why can't you do that?
Well, look, I agree with you 100%, but I'm just bringing out the problem that we're going to have. The sheriff's department, you have the Greenville City, the police, they got their own dog people.
Yes.
And we don't interfere with that. If you would just take Pitt County, and that's what everybody seems to be talking about, did you know you're not talking about but about 40,000 people? If you take all of them out of the towns that's already got it, and the city of Greenville to begin with.
And you're correct, and if you think about it, the city of Greenville is bringing a lot of animals into the shelter for euthanasia.
Exactly right.
So you're already at the tail end of a very negative aspect of things. So wouldn't it be better if we could interlock and just what you're thinking?
That's exactly right. I don't see why somebody hasn't done something about that. I just don't understand it.
There you are, Mr. James. It's right for you.
No, I mean, really. That's it, but I want, we should.
Thank you, Eugene. Tom?
Ron, this Wednesday, Animal Control Advisory Board is meeting at 5:30. Your presentation is succinct. There's a lot going on in that particular meeting, but I would recommend that you get a hold of Michelle and/or Linda Mazur or both, and see if you can't get on, because one of the things that we will be talking about has to do with the funding, and some of this is regurgitation of what they've already know and do and so on. But I think the entire Animal Control Advisory Board would benefit from your presentation.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'll take you up on it.
That's all I have.
Anybody else? If not, thank you, Doc, and we appreciate and we hope to benefit from what you presented to us.
And thank you all for your time. I know it's important.
Now we move on to the public address to the board. I have 12 names here that are listed as wanting to speak about the dog problem. Goes from volunteers to benevolent care to spading, citizens. Has Dr. Allison covered what you wanted to say, or have you got something you want to say in addition to that? Or do you want me to read the names out? I want you to be heard, but we had a public hearing some time back. Probably y'all did not get that wording of that, but we've gone through that, and what we have tonight is a 3-minute time frame. But if you've got groups of individuals, more than one, that would say the same thing, then maybe you could have a spokesman for that. But just, if you want me to call all the names, I'll do it. But
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a point of clarification? The last time we had a large group of people here for animal control, they spoke under the public addresses to the board. The board has not yet held a public hearing on the proposed canine control ordinance. That would be forthcoming in the near future. Just want to clarify that.
all right, Ms. Jane.
These people came to talk, and they should be given their 3 minutes to talk. That's the way I look at it.
Call the names.
All right, we will call your name, and as the first person comes up, if the county attorney can give the guidelines for public addresses to the board.
Certainly.
First one we have is Stephanie Slayton.
And as you're coming up, just to remind you, the board allows 3 minutes to speak for public addresses to the board. The board welcomes all comments on matters of public concern. Please keep all comments respectful, and we'll move through one by one, and when you hear the beeper, your time is up.
Thank you. My name's Stephanie Slayton. Do you need my address?
Please.
615 Winterfield Drive in Winterville. I'm here for threefold. One, I'm a resident of Pitt County, and I'm frequently out running and cycling on the county roads, and so see these stray animals out in that area. Two, I am a dog owner of 3 stray animals that have formerly been strays, and I am a volunteer at the Pitt County Animal Shelter with a group called 5Ks for Canines. So I am in agreement with the need for some sort of animal control ordinance, but do believe that it needs to be done in such a manner that we're still supporting the adoption and bettering the lives of these animals that have maybe been put in unfortunate situations. When we're out with the 5Ks for Canines group, either walking the dogs in order to give them some exercise and socialization, or at local races, we frequently hear the comment, oh, how can you even stand to work, volunteer at the shelter when you know the animals are just going to be killed? So this unfortunately still is the public perception of some people in the county, and I would hate for that to actually maybe become reality depending on how some of these ordinances are. I agree with a pet licensing. I grew up in Wisconsin. We had dogs growing up, and our dogs were always licensed. It happened at the same time as their rabies vaccinations, and when I first adopted my first dog 12 and a half years ago, I was sort of shocked that in North Carolina, I was in Burlington in Alamance County at the time, and then when I moved to Greenville, that there was no such licensing to sort of manage that. So I would just like to say that the proposed plan by Dr. Allison, is one that I feel sort of can satisfy all needs with, the need to control the animals, but also a way to sort of help those lives of those animals that have been put in unfortunate situations to no cost of their own, no fault of their own. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Beth Ann Wilkie.
Hi, my name is Beth Ann Wilkie, and I am at 826 Corbett Street in Winterville, North Carolina. I'm the executive director over at the Humane Society of Eastern Carolina, and I'm here to speak also as a Pitt County resident. I feel at the last meeting there was a lot to say about the public speaking in terms of their safety from the canine control ordinance, and possibly not as much from an animal perspective. The Humane Society and the Pitt County Animal Shelter have been partnered together since 2012 to work to reduce euthanasia rates in Pitt County. In working with them, we have witnessed their never-ending dedication to the so-called throwaway animals in our community. They are committed to giving adoptable animals a second chance and have brought Pitt County live release rates up dramatically in the last 10 years to 56%. Still at this number, over 2,000 animals are euthanized yearly in Pitt County. As a mother, a runner, and a citizen, I am in support of a canine control ordinance for a matter of public safety. But I ask that it go hand in hand with a strategic plan such as the one that Dr. Allison has presented to ensure that we are not neglecting the responsibility to homeless pets and neglected animals in our community. We feel that the animals have suffered enough at no fault of their own. The plan should include an adoption program that will facilitate the high growth of our live release rate at the Pitt County Animal Shelter, as well as an educational plan to help educate our community as responsible pet owners and what we can do to help in the pet overpopulation problem that our county faces. As an owner of 2 dogs that came from the Pitt County Animal Shelter, I can assure you that their lives are very valuable and so worth saving. Please support the continued growth of the adoptions of the animals within the shelter and form an education plan for our community members on animal safety, care, and overpopulation. The animals deserve a chance at life, one that they have never really been given. So all we're really asking is that you support the animals as well.
Thank you, ma'am.
Jamie Comerton.
Hi, my name is Jamie Connerton, 2205 High Drive, Apartment G, Greenville. I'm here as a Pitt County Animal Shelter volunteer. I also lead a volunteer group, the 5Ks for Canines. And we are a group that helps to increase the adoptions by taking adoptable dogs to public events. I'm asking that you support the animal control ordinance in a way that supports the hard work that we have done and continue to do every day at the Pitt County Animal Shelter. I'm asking that you support a central website where the 9 holding areas would report all dogs who are found. Animal control officers would simply take a picture of the dog that they find on their phone and upload it to a central website. At this time, each group has their own place to report found dogs. With only 72 hours to try to find your dog, that's a lot of searching to have to do. The Pitt County Animal Shelter has a Facebook page that is proof that a central website works. At this time, we have over 2,100 members on our page. We often post pictures that people send of us of their lost dogs, and most are returned to their owners within 24 hours. Many are reunited with owners within minutes. This happened on Saturday when a girl who I saw at the animal shelter after coming back from an event, she said, "Can you help me find my dog?" And the first thing I said was, "Are you part of the Facebook group?" And she wasn't. So I gave her my email address. She sent me a picture of her dog. I posted it, and within 2 minutes, somebody knew where her dog was. So that's proof that having a central website will help to get these dogs back home. By having dogs spend less time in the shelter, it would also reduce the cost that the county has to pay to feed in-house pets who are lost. Thank you.
Keith Cooper.
Good evening. I'm here not to talk about the animal control ordinance, but the need for a Human Relations Commission. As most of you remember, back in 1999, a group of individuals and I asked the Pitt County Board of Commissioners to establish a Pitt County Human Relations Commission that's very similar to what we have in the city of Greenville. And lately I've been rounding up support. I've been crossing ideological divides, rounding up support, and I've gotten some interesting comments. I recall I contacted Kenneth Ross, who's running for the Board of Commissioners, to get him here to speak on human relations. And the first question that Kenneth Ross asked me was, is this telephone, or may I record this conversation? I said, why do you want to do that? And he went out and explained, okay, sometimes we say things that we don't want to get out, or we maybe misinterpret it. And I said, I don't care. There are no secrets here about human relations. What I'm about to tell you could be told to the President of the United States. I don't give a darn about you recording this conversation. Go ahead. And then I said, are you going to be here to support us? No, wait until after the elections and see me then. So I ask that you place principle above politics. We spent too much time dealing with this issue. I've gotten letters of support from Gene Troyer, who is the chairman of the North Carolina Human Relations Commission. Mr. Troyer said he'll come here and give a PowerPoint presentation for anybody who wants more information on human relations. Gene Troyer. I got a letter in my hand here, Asheville-Buncombe County, Lucia Doherty. She was like, you guys in Pitt County are arguing over human relations? What's wrong with you guys down there? I said, well, pray for us. We'll get this done at some point. After 15 years, we'll get this done. Have a letter here from Willie Ratchford, Mecklenburg, Charlotte Mecklenburg Human Relations Commission. What's wrong with you guys down there, or up there? Let's get this thing done, And so we got a great deal of support. Even at your desk, you have a letter from State Senator Don Davis saying, let's move forward with something. Now, in a nutshell, what can this thing do? It can educate the community about fair housing, equal employment, diversity, inclusion, and conflict resolution. It could provide mediation services. It could facilitate healthy community dialogue as a neutral third party when sensitive topics arise. It can also help people understand their rights and responsibilities in maintaining community equity. It would work with law enforcement and local citizens to maintain positive police-community relations, and it would provide client, resource, and referrals to other agencies when individuals in the community need assistance outside of what the commission offers. So I ask that you put this on the agenda and vote on this thing, and if you need to ask the county manager or whoever to do additional research, please do so, because I believe that there's a great deal of support in moving forward on this issue and bringing closure to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Next, we have Mary Beth Hobgood.
Thank you. My name is Mary Beth Hobgood, 4109 Dublin Road, Winterville. I'm the Executive Director of Spay Today, a county taxpayer, and the owner of a wonderful rescue dog. I'm here this evening to endorse the strategic plan set forth by the Pitt County Animal Control Advisory Board. Their plan is a comprehensive, step-by-step plan to address animal control concerns in the county. Spay-neuter plays an important role in this strategic plan. One female cat and her kittens can produce up to 11,800 cats in 5 years. One female dog can produce as many as 12,288 dogs in 5 years. These statistics tend to be shocking to some, but are all too familiar to animal advocates and shelters that are flooded with these homeless pets, and of course tie directly to all of the things that we've mentioned tonight with the problem with roaming unwanted animals. As we address animal control concerns in Pitt County, spay-neuter is an important part of the equation. Spay Today, located here in Greenville, is Eastern North Carolina's only low-cost clinic dedicated solely to performing spay and neuter surgeries. Our mission is to provide low-cost sterilization services as the non-lethal solution to stray, unwanted, and abandoned pets, thereby reducing the pet overpopulation in Eastern North Carolina. As a partner working with Pitt County Animal Shelter and the Humane Society of Eastern Carolina, our role is to address the pet overpopulation before rather than after the fact. Empirical evidence shows that active spay-neuter programs such as ours have a direct impact in lowering the numbers of unwanted animals brought into local shelters. With the cost of housing an animal at the shelter averaging $133, any and all means should be taken to reduce intake. I bring to your attention that spay-neuter surgery actually costs less than the $133 the taxpayers spend at the animal shelter. Although Pitt County Animal Shelter is exceptional at what they do, limited dollars and manpower makes their job extremely difficult. It would undermine the good work that's already been accomplished here in Pitt County if haphazard regulations are set in place. Such regulations result in increased shelter intake without proper funding will return the shelter to a holding pen for animals, which will inevitably be euthanized. Our goal is to assist in reducing intake, and we have achieved this. Since our doors opened in May of 2006, we have performed more than 23,000 surgeries. During this time, the total number of animals taken to the shelter has decreased. Reduced intake saves taxpayers' dollars. Increases in spay and neuters not only result in fewer unplanned and therefore unwanted pets being brought to the shelter, but it has made shelter animals more adoptable by making it more convenient and less costly for new pet owners. Spay-neuter decreases biting, barking, and aggression in dogs. It reduces the urge for male dogs to roam. Our collective vision is a loving home for all animals. We are grateful to the Animal Control Advisory Board for their support of our mission, and we implore the commissioners to heed the advice of the Animal Control Advisory Board as well as Dr. Allison and move forward with a common sense, comprehensive approach to animal control concerns in the county. Thank you for your time.
Sarah McCain.
I'm Dr. Sarah McCain. My address is 107 Terry Street, Greenville. This year will mark my second year as a Pitt County resident and as the surgical veterinarian at Spay Today. My 23rd as a licensed veterinarian, my 31st working and volunteering in the field, and I will admit my 49th as an animal lover, owner, and advocate. I have lived in 8 states and worked in 5. Within North Carolina, over the last 23 years, I've worked in 4 counties and have worked with numerous animal control agencies, rescue groups, and law enforcement canines at the city, county, and state level. Over the years, I've seen a lot of what works and what isn't so successful. Free-roaming domestic animals are inarguably a concern for their personal welfare, their safety and welfare of the domestic and wild animals they encounter, and certainly for the human population and their property. I'm here tonight to ask you to broaden the scope of the proposed animal containment ordinance in line with the strategic plan set forth by the Pitt County Animal Control Shelter, Pitt County Animal Control Advisory Board, and as outlined by Dr. Allison. Without adequate personnel and housing in place, this measure may be a death warrant for far too many dogs. So, beloved pets may be euthanized before their families are able to locate them. I'm sorry, I'm emotional. More dogs will be tethered, likely to become more territorial and aggressive, potentially causing more dog bites to occur. We need to educate the public on appropriate animal containment and that 24/7 tethering is not an option. I'm sorry. We need to educate children as well as many adults to know how to react to strange and roaming dogs. There are excellent programs available to put into the schools. I personally and professionally would like to see pet licensing in place, and ideally microchipping as a means of permanent animal ID. The monies raised will help fund the other measures, even with partial participation. Pitt County Animal Shelter will be able to attract repeat offenders, reunite lost pets with their families, and continue with their adoption program. The Pitt County Animal Control Advisory Board Strategic Planning has an excellent guideline on progression, and I ask that you consider following that guideline as proposed and make a difference for the animals. Thank you.
Laura Moore. Laura Moore.
Hi, Laura Moore, 205 Andrew Lane, Winterville. Good evening. I'm here as a 25-year resident of Pitt County and as a taxpayer to ask you to support the plan that was presented to you tonight by Dr. Ron Allison. It doesn't matter who you ask, everyone's going to want the very same thing. We're going to want no roaming aggressive animals. We're going to want an efficient shelter that serves the citizens of its county and the animals in the county, and also maximizes the investment, the return on any investment that you provide. And I think that also, as with anything we try to accomplish, we need a good plan to get us there. And if we don't follow a good plan, we won't get the results that we're trying for, and we could very likely get the results that we don't want. I think the plan that Dr. Allison presented tonight is the good plan to get us there, and I'll ask that you support that plan and fund that plan. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Jules Hurst.
My name is Jules Hurst. I live at 4500 Lagan Circle in Winterville. I would like to endorse the education concerning animal behavior in the schools, especially in the elementary grades. I would also suggest to the commissioners that the expansion of the exercise areas at the current animal shelter be expanded. This provides a very good stress relief for the animals. It makes them much more adoptable, and much of this can be done once the planners agree with the donations of volunteer labor and material. And finally, would like to address the issue for increased training for animal control officers and suggest that the commissioners look at badging and arming these officers, as they are often inserted into extremely volatile situations, not just involving animals, but also involving humans. And think that with the possible stream of revenue that will occur with dog registration, animal registration in general, and systematic fines for non-compliance, that this stream of revenue could help address some of the issues that you've heard here tonight. Thank you for your time.
James Woodley.
Good evening. My name is James Woodley, and I'm coming to you as a former member of the Animal Control Advisory Board, and specifically from the chair of the committee that developed the strategic plan for animal control in the county. I retired because of health reasons from the board. I want to remind the commissioners, because I know you all have read it and heard all of the issues that have been addressed, but what that plan did was it brought forth a vision, and I'm going to summarize that vision. It would serve that the Pitt County Animal Shelter would advocate for funding and personnel to continue to meet North Carolina guidelines, and that it would coordinate with all of the partners in addressing animal care issues, and then continuous education for the county residents addressing animal control issues in the county. Under that vision, there were a number of goals that were developed and set aside, and those goals were tiered in that we didn't want to overwhelm you with a lot of goals that would happen immediately. And some of the immediate goals dealt with developing an infrastructure that would allow personnel and the shelter to meet the capacity requirements for addressing animal control issues that are currently going on, rather than additional ordinances and things of that nature. And we also had goals that would make the animal control program within the county financially self-sustaining, and that's what we had hoped. As a private citizen, I am encouraged by the interest that has been generated by animal control this year. It was our hope when we developed that plan that the local experts would come together and talk about how to do it. We did not want to put something in stone that would address the issues, but the people that were actually on the ground doing the work would come in here as they're doing tonight and talk about how to get things done. I also challenge you as the commissioners to continue to look at the broad range of animal control issues, which you've been doing, and I've been following it in the paper, and I think that is the way to go. And I fully support the plan that Dr. Allison brought forth. Thank you.
Susan Hurst.
Hi, my name is Susan Hurst, and I live at 4500 Lagan Circle in Winterville, North Carolina. I'm here to urge the support and funding of the strategic plan. My husband and I retired here in the end of June this past summer. We chose Greenville because it was a progressive small southern city with the university, the medical school, the dental school, and a very highly rated medical center. After 4 or 5 visits here, we found this community to be very warm and loving. And our experience with the animal shelter has been exceptional. It has made us feel more of a part of this community. Within 2 weeks after, excuse me, I'm going to be like Dr. Sarah. Within 2 weeks after we arrived, we had adopted 2 dogs from the shelter, who are a very important part of our family. And we also started volunteering there 2 mornings a week, where we walk the dogs and socialize the dogs. And I cannot tell you how rewarding it is to come back another day and find that a dog has been adopted, because we know what a wonderful dog that is, and we're so happy that these strays and abandoned animals are being united with loving families. It is an important part of a humane, nurturing society for animals to be taken care of, just like people are to be taken care of. And so I urge you to please fund this strategic plan. Thank you.
Linda Kuhn. Kuhn.
Thank you. I lost the umlauts in Ellis Island. Okay, I'm going to keep my remarks short. Linda Kuhn, 2401 South Charles Boulevard, Greenville. I think you all keep it so odd in here, so we talk fast. Okay, I've lived in Greenville since 1987, and I opened my veterinary practice, East Carolina Veterinary Service, in 1989. I'm involved with many animal welfare groups. Everyone who's in here, we are all very caring individuals. There's one big problem: we never have enough money. The one good thing about the shelter is it has this marvelous strategic plan. I hope you all have read it. A lot of the things that Dr. Allison is proposing is in this strategic plan. I'm on other boards, and not many people have a plan, and you really need to have one so you know where you're going and you can follow that with figures and know if you're doing a good job. So I propose that we endorse the proposal by Ron Allison, and it is very good to be funded, and we had talked about licensing. And I get a lot of people who are from out of state, and they come into my office and they go, where do I go to get my dog license? Because they're already trained to do that. So I think that would be something that we could easily get going here in Greenville. There wouldn't be much what I call pushback. I also want to remind you that we used to keep our dogs and cats in the backyard. Well, they've gone from the backyard to the kitchen, and now they're in the bedroom. So we do need to make sure that we address these issues. Plus, we have a public safety issue. I was involved with my neighbor with two pit bulls attacking another dog, and that's a dangerous situation. An officer came and shot those dogs. It's very dangerous, so we do also need to address the public safety issue. I think that's very important. So I just want to say, in conclusion, my beeper hasn't gone off, that I totally endorse the proposal by Ron Allison. Thank you so much for your time.
Next, we have Doreen Liverman.
Good evening. Doreen Liverman, 1031 Laurie Ellis Road, Winterville. I own a business in Winterville called Hoffman House Pet Resort. We board and groom dogs and cats and sell some supplies. I'm also strongly affiliated with Spay Today, our high-volume, low-cost spay-neuter clinic here in Pitt County. Even though it's the pampered pets of our community that I see at my business every day, I've been aware of and involved in many of the animal issues in Pitt County for over 25 years. I'd like to thank the commissioners for the positive changes that you have made and implemented. The humane euthanasia, supporting spay-neuter efforts, and running a successful shelter. I'm also aware that animal control proposals similar to this one that you're hearing about tonight have been asked for over and over again. So I'm here to ask you to finally make it happen. It is time. Regarding licensing, other North Carolina counties have shown that licensing can increase county revenue. Regarding mandatory spay and neuter, our own county has experienced a decrease in overpopulation due to our spay-neuter efforts. We also need to implement a lost and found service, which, if had been available recently, I could have used to return a very nice dog who wandered onto my property but instead had to be rehomed, which points to another vital part of animal control, adoptions, and for no reason, financial or otherwise, should effort ever be taken away from that. I'm here to say that this is a good proposal and long, long overdue. Our county deserves your support, and it's just simple. It's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Mark Hayes.
My name is Mark Hayes, and I live in Greenville at 540 Westminster Circle. I've been a veterinarian for 30 years here in Greenville and Pitt County, and I came and spoke with you back in February, I think it was, or January, when we had the animal control meeting. Dr. Allison has, I reviewed the slideshow he sent me seeking our support for this, and my partners and I, we have a couple of concerns, to be honest. We support licensing, and we think that would achieve many of the goals that have been sought by those who want to control the roaming dog population and provide some funding that the shelter needs. The problem is probably the breeder fee and the breeder permit, and trying to discern sort of who does that apply to, when does it apply to them? Does it apply at 6 months? Does it apply at a year? We have many clients that choose not to neuter their male dogs. They have no intention of breeding that dog, so they're not going to be a breeder. But they have no intention of breeding that dog. They just, for whatever reason, have a problem with neutering that dog. And some are uncertain as to what their plans are. So when does one become a breeder? Repeatedly, we've heard about staffing concerns and the ability for staff to do their jobs, to get out there in the field. There's not enough time. There's not enough men or women, man hours. And yet, we're going to inspect breeders. And so I think that this plan has some excellent points, and I think we wholeheartedly support licensing and having a differential licensing fee. But I think that sometimes you accomplish what you can accomplish, and sometimes you maybe put off for another day some of the other things. I just feel like the breeder part of this is going to run into some severe headwinds. You have hunters, you have a lot of factions out there that $300 a dog for a breeder is going to be it's going to be too much. I think that probably our problems could be greatly solved by doing the differential licensing fee, and then maybe study the breeder situation a little bit more to determine if that's something that
that we have the manpower to enforce, because the last thing we want is to start down a path and then we don't even have the manpower to enforce what we already have done. So other than that, I really like the proposal. I reviewed it and I emailed back Dr. Allison and I told him, I said, I'm wholeheartedly in support of this, but I really think that the breeder permit thing you need to reconsider, because I think that the rest of it's outstanding, but that part of it is going to be objected to by a lot of the people who you want their support. And if you're going to gain consensus between the city and the county and all the municipalities, I think you need to find something that everybody can agree on. And I think the licensing fee will do most of what we really, really need, and then build on that and maybe bring this other in over a period of time. One more comment. Last time I was here, I forgot to say this, but I really truly believe this is that rights and responsibilities are huge. And we have responsibilities as pet owners, and having a pet is not a right. It is a responsibility. And for us to excuse people of the responsibilities, I think, makes for a poor community. We need to hold them responsible for what they should be doing for their pets. And if they are not responsible, there need to be penalties for that. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. That concludes the list that signed up at the beginning of the meeting. Are there any of those standing in the back that would like to speak now that did not sign up? Please come up, sir.
I'd like to speak.
Just a minute. Let's get the one in the back, and then we'll get you. Come on.
Thank you, Sharon Owens.
Thanks, sir.
Probably most of y'all know me. I'm a retired county employee, and I've been up here before on animal issues. I'm an animal advocate. Just today, I live on a road. My name's James Satterthwaite, and I'm not sure what to tell you the road I live on because it's a drop-off place for stray dogs. And just today, Sunday morning, I was riding the road. Hadn't seen one in a while, but I've been living on that road 20 years. There's a black dog sitting at the ditch bank where the normal drop-off place is, and she's there waiting. It's a she. It's a female dog, and she's there waiting for the owner to return. After a couple of days, the dog realized the owner's not coming back. They just drop the dog out. And then they start wandering for food. And these dogs, in probably 7-8 weeks, they get emaciated and they get to the point of death. And some of them don't recover because they can't live off roadkill and garbage. And it breaks my heart to see that. I like animals. I got all my dogs are rescue dogs. I don't breed dogs. All of them been fixed. You know, all of them well taken care of. I got a vet that even comes to my house. But I look after my dogs. I like family. But I picked this dog up today. And we're going to try to find it a home. I know the Humane Society's got a long waiting list. You know, they won't take dogs unless they're really real good adoptable dogs. But these mutts or throw-out dogs are really not what people want to adopt. But they make the best dogs in the world, I can tell you that, because all of mine are. But we did do something on this. Since I've been living on this road 20 years, I don't know. I've lost count to how many dogs have been thrown out on this road. And it's not just my road. Any isolated road in Pitt County, eastern North Carolina, people just ride down the road, and I don't know what type of people they're. Irresponsible people. I don't know. Well, I got some other adjectives I want to use, but I'll refrain from using any other adjectives about these people. But they're sorry people, sorry low-life individuals that will take their animal and just drop it beside the road and think they're doing better than carrying it to the animal shelter to get it humanely euthanized. I mean, that's not doing a dog a favor when you carry it down a country road, isolated road, and just drive off and leave it. I mean, it's horrible to do that to a dog. And I hope they do something, and maybe if we can get the funding, maybe we can have some animal control officers. And I'd like to see maybe one of them maybe sworn in underneath the sheriff's department, maybe go to BLAT and actually have some teeth where you can arrest some of these people that are cruel to animals. You'd be surprised the number of cruel. I used to enjoy working cruelty cases because I like certain people I did like to arrest, not all people, but I did like to arrest these people that are I've seen heinous things done to animals, horrible things. I mean, setting your dog on fire, shooting them, arrested people for taking a baseball bat to their dog. I've arrested people for bad things they've done to animals, you know, and they don't need animals. And I like the licensing fee, and I've got a lot of dogs, and I'll pay license fee. I don't care what it costs. If it goes to the right funding, I will gladly pay licensing fees. You know, that's all I got to say, but I hope y'all really We've been doing it, and other counties have animal control ordinances. I don't know why we're so far behind. Thank you for listening to me, and I appreciate any help you can do.
Thanks, sir. All right.
Chairman Owens, my name is Billy Ray Jackson. I'm mayor of the small town of Grifton, North Carolina. We're a small town, God help us, but we're deserving of respect. When I read in the newspaper, each one of you commissioners, the most of you, have came to my breakfast, my mayor's breakfast at the Shad Festival, and have enjoyed every bit of hospitality that I had to afford you. Now, Commissioner Webb, if you ask me to come to your home this coming Sunday and dine with you and have dinner with you and your kind family, and I sat there and smiled at you at your table and eat up everything that you put on my plate, and then later on that week that you had heard that I'd run your home down to the dogs, talked about your furnishing, telling your family members that the first mistake that they made was tolerated you, you would think that I was two-faced as a pane of glass. And I think you'd be right. And a two-faced person cannot be trusted because they'll be whatever they need to be when they need to be it. And I take great issue with the statements that Commissioner Tom Johnson made to one of my citizens in Grifton. If I'm correctly informed, poked her in her chest, ridiculed her, that she had disgraced the school that he attended by having on a shirt when he'd done a fine job of that himself. Now, I'm not here looking an apology. I don't know what Miss Lewis wants. Whatever Miss Lewis wants, I support her in it. But I'll say this, I'd love to have an explanation. I believe words rightly spoken are like apples of gold in pictures of silver. And I don't no more believe you can take back a word once you've said it than you can unring a bell. But I would like for these statements to be explained to me because I'm having a hard time determining if they were statements of arrogance or the expressions of an idiot. But I would really appreciate that this board makes some type of chastisement or a vote of censure on his behalf. And let me go as far as to say that if something don't take place, I'll just figure it's the opinion of this whole board and not Mr. Johnson. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Jackson. Anybody else back there that wants to speak? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, come please.
My name is Clydell Peterkin, and I live 1717 Morris Circle. And I have a complaint here. It's been for about 5 years. I think I spoke to Mr. Glawhorn about the animals roaming around on my property. They dug up holes, like come over at night, they let I found out who the dog owner was. And they dug up holes around my fence, around my shed and my house. So what I did, I called the animal shelter. They came out and they caught the dog. The kid found out his dog was locked up. So he came some kind of way and got his dog out of the little place that they had brought. Then I called the animal shelter back again, and I told them about it. And they say, well, we're going to go over there, and if they don't do better, we're going to ticket them. I never heard nothing else. Then I caught the dog on the weekend, and then I called down for them to come pick up the dog. They say they don't work on the weekend. So anyway, I put a fence up. Now, they let the dog out at 6 o'clock at night after it get dark. And the dogs come and dig up under the fence now, still having trouble with the same people with their dogs. So I just wonder if anything could be done about it.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Come on up, please. Sheriff, you want to talk next?
My name is Diane Bunn, 107 Azalea Drive in Greenville. I have lived in Pitt County my entire life. I grew up in the little town of Farmville. Last year, my child, I did not come prepared to talk tonight, so I might be all over the place, so keep your tissues too, because this is a good story. My child was diagnosed with severe anxiety. Spent 2 weeks in Chapel Hill Hospital because he was threatening suicide. He had gotten so depressed from his anxiety. Got to work with a therapy dog in Chapel Hill. When we came back to Pitt County, he was not quite 13 yet. We went to the volunteer at Humane Society, volunteered at the Humane Society as soon as he turned 13, loves it out there. We have 2 dogs already from the Humane Society. It has really saved his life. So the other thing he wanted to do was foster dogs because I did not want any more dogs in my house. So we decided to foster dogs. First foster dog I got was the first week in May, and I kept that dog until almost the end of July. It had been saved by a rescue out of the shelter because the owners could not be located. They thought that the dog was about 1.5, 2 years old. I kept the dog till the end of July. It was posted on Facebook where the rescue was going to be, where this dog was going to be. A lady showed up. It was her dog. We were calling the dog Rose. The dog's name was Buttons. When she called that dog's name, I'm not joking, she got down on 2 knees, she's boohoo crying, and the dog put her paws up on that lady's shoulders. She knew exactly where she was. With the proposal that has been given, that dog would have never found that lady again. And she'd have had to explain to her kids. Her kids were so excited. We still keep in touch to figure out what's happening with the dog. I went to the animal shelter here in Pitt County against my better judgment back in August and found a puppy that was about 7 weeks old, 8 weeks old at the time. Bought it. Cutest little black lab Australian Shepherd mix you could find. 5 little pounds of black fur with the sky blue eyes that you can imagine. My child was like, we can't leave this dog here, Mommy. He fully understands the ramifications of all the dogs that are in Pitt County now. If that is one of the things I have taught him that will stick to him through his teenage years, because Lord knows nothing else will, he will understand that these animals can't just keep being born and have no homes to go to. He understands the importance of fostering. Help them until you can get them to where they need to be. So he is going to be on board with that. He'll have a county job probably forever too. So anyway, this dog that I got from the animal shelter is now being trained as a service dog and will come home Friday, has been gone for about 5 weeks, and it will be a service dog that he will be able to take anywhere with him that he wants to go to help him with his anxiety. He would not get up here and speak in front of you like I did. He would not even speak to you if I was standing with you beside of him. You can take that dog and him to PetSmart. He will tell you out of his mouth before he even realizes he's spoken what kind of dog that is, what her name is. So it's not just for the animals. It saved my child's life. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can I ease in?
Slide right in and make yourself at home. Yes, sir.
Just a
Help
minute.
yourself.
I tell you what, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is R.J. Hemby, 270 Rivercrest, Greenville, North Carolina. I was born here in 1952. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, know that. Okay, I'm here tonight to talk to you about something that's very close and dear to my heart, which is human relations. Back in 1971, I had an opportunity to go to the high school, which was J.H. Rose High School. But in going to J.H. Rose High School, we had some concerns with race relations. They said that the white kids was being disrupted, but they said the blacks are also. So they said, how can we resolve this? Well, maybe we need to create a relations. And they created a human relations within the school systems. They brought the blacks from one side and the whites from the other side. Those of us who they said were causing the trouble. So we became the relations. And in doing relations at the school system, we had a better relationship amongst ourselves, and that was number one. So we used human relations guidelines to get through that, all the way down, trigger down to back here in 1977, we had the North Carolina Hunger Coalition. And the Hunger Coalition, through human relations, worked with the Department of Social Services as human advocates. And what we did was we helped AFDC families and mothers to get their food stamps, the FDC checks, and those acronyms was used in those days, human relations. And then I had an opportunity to serve on the City of Greenville's Human Relations Council. And out of that came Dr. Irons. And all of you, some of you around the room know Dr. Irons, and you know Dr. Best. Well, I had an opportunity to serve under Dr. Irons on the Human Relations Council, and we began to work with the community and relations and to do the various things that Mr. Cooper alluded to tonight. And I would ask that you would begin to think about on 4 planks: mission, vision, value. Remember, without no past, there's no present, and without no present, there's no future. So we must do this. We must learn to respect our past, work upon our presence to build our future, and that is in all relations. And what I'm finding is that our differences and similarities, you would be surprised how we all could coexist. Human relations is the way to go in this opportunity in 2014. You know, the cities have them, and as big as we are to begin to unite our counties, communities, will be human relations. Because a lot of things that you think we are so different in, if different communities were working through human relations, we could get that done. So I would say to you, to make this a great future, let's work towards human relations. And I thank you for your time, and have a good evening.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Well, that would help.
If not, I think we've had a request for a restroom break, and we'll be back as soon as you can.
We ain't started the budget yet.
We're now back in open session. Mr. James, you got anything you want to say?
No.
Sure about that?
Well,
Go ahead and say.
talk always.
Don't encourage it, Mark.
Don't encourage it, that's right.
Now we move on to items for report.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the items. Oh, have we already?
No, I missed, I'm wrong.
That's you. We haven't got.
It's
consent
Dwayne.
yet.
Well, you can still do that.
Go ahead, I'm
read.
trying to get ahead of you. Go ahead, Dwayne.
That's fine. I thought that Commissioner Ward may be wanting to go ahead and approve this, and I would have not been offended.
Plan. 1, 2, 3.
But good evening. What you have before you is your February 28th, 2014 monthly financial report on the general fund. We continue to track similarly to in the current fiscal year as we have in the former. You'll notice if you're tracking this from month to month, the month of February, we did take somewhat of a dip in our revenue over expenditure. But the dip that we experienced in the reduction of that margin for the month-to-date number is typical. It's a seasonal number. It's very comparable to what happened last February. Again, we have shown you a net difference, netting out the revenue anticipation note proceeds that are included in the budget. One of the numbers that we are keeping a close eye on is the top line in your financial report. If you'll see that taxes ad valorem, you'll note that this year we've received 92.6% of our anticipated budget in our ad valorem tax. Last February, we were at 95.3% of budget. The ad valorem budget does include our one-time tax and tag revenues for this year. We continue to see an increase in the amount of tax and tag. It was implemented in September, and I know you'll be getting a follow-up meeting from our presentation from our tax administrator, Kathy Booker, who will give you a little more detail on our experience with the implementation. But I do expect that ad valorem percentage to continue to accelerate as we progress through the fiscal year.
Ms. Ward?
No, I don't have.
Yes,
Oh,
you
I
do.
move for acceptance.
Second.
Any discussion? Let's vote. Thank you, Dwayne. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Holder.
Phil?
I'll make this real quick. As you know, our first contract on the Chicago job went bankrupt. We got a second contract started through the bonding company in mid-December. They've been doing a lot of work that's not very apparent. working at the pump stations and various other sites. So they are moving forward. I think the big thing that maybe some of you hear about is the lack of cleanup. Well, it's just simply been too wet for 6 months to clean up the mess that the first contractor made. As soon as the weather breaks, I think you'll see a whole lot of progress on that. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Any questions of Mr. Dixon? If not, thank you, Phil. Okay, man, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On to the manager's report, item A, your next meeting dates for the month of April will be April 7th and April 21st, 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. respectively. Our normal meeting schedule for that month. Item B, regarding the asbestos abatement project here in the county office building, as well as the building next door in the transportation building. The abatement in this building is complete. There is some pipe rewrapping that is still being conducted, being performed on the upper floors. The Transportation Services Building is underway now as we talk, and right now, in terms of the project schedule in the budget, we are within budget, and there have been no issues that have been identified. The testing, air quality testing has occurred each night as they have performed the abatement, and those have been within the range, and there have basically been no issues. So I just want to give you a progress report on that project we're working on. The Health Department asked me to share that they are applying for a Health Resources and Services Administration grant. This is basically a 3-year grant that has about $1.3 million in funding, so I just wanted you to be aware of that. Item D, the theme for the National County Government Month, which is put on by NACO, which is our national organization, the National Association of Counties this year, is called Ready and Resilient Counties, Prepare, Respond, and Thrive. And Pitt County will participate again this year, as we have every year, and have our media campaign and our departments respond to and inform the public in regards to National County Government Month. Item E, just want to give you an update, and I want to acknowledge there's some chiefs in the audience regarding the paging radio system evaluation. That project is progressing. Some of the actions that have occurred, we have distributed maps to the fire and EMS units. They're asked to mark problem areas on those maps. We've sent out letters to the different stakeholders, inviting them to one of 3 meetings that will be occurring tomorrow when Kimball will be here on site. We've also asked the presidents of the Fire and Rescue Association to identify one person they would like to have to be at all the meetings tomorrow, whether early in the morning, whether it's traveling to the different sites, the Wintergreen site or this site, to look at the tower and to review the information with staff, and also obviously to be present tomorrow night. There's two meetings, one at 6, one at 8, in which any and all of the stakeholders within fire and EMS are being invited to come in and share their concerns, their experiences with the system with Kimball. And all this will help Kimball in their analysis of the system itself. Also just wanted to report Phil Dickerson had attended the fire chiefs meeting on March the 20th and took a few minutes to explain where we're at in the process, what we're done, and where we're going. The survey results.
Mr. Chairman, before you leave that, I want to make sure that one of the fire chiefs from the area that's having all the problems will be that person that would go around with you about this radio station. Can't that be?
We have reached out to all the fire chiefs. I believe in terms of going just to the Wintergreen site and to the coming to this site, the president of the Phil, you want to? He can verify who's being identified.
Mr. James, we've got about 14 hours of work scheduled tomorrow in learning what the fire chiefs and rescue chiefs feel that the problems are.
Okay.
We'll take that, look at them, and then coordinate with them. We'll establish the areas that we want to test, and we will invite a fire chief or a rescue chief in that area to go along.
Right, that's what I'm concerned with. Make sure they're from that area, have somebody to represent.
Yeah, wait, Phil, you know, Mr. James got a good point. You say you're looking at see what the problems are. Well, the ones that are there on the scenes, the one knows what the problems are, Phil. I didn't get that.
And that's the ones we're talking to.
All right, but you're going to make sure that they're there.
Yes, sir.
All right,
We should have somebody there tomorrow night from all 20 different volunteer fire departments, and hopefully all the 10 different EMS squads, any other stakeholders, as well as during the day when these tours are being done and the system's being analyzed. And this is just the first step of analysis. I'm sure Kimball will be doing more in-depth analysis as they review the engineering plans that federal engineering put together, and the RFPs and the whole package that we had rolled out, their analysis of telling us what they thought we needed. As the board is aware, the questionnaire or survey results to this system was distributed to the board. We've also distributed those to the fire and EMS chiefs throughout the county, and there are a lot of, there's a newspaper article today about it, a lot of results in there from the user's perspective. This is being given to Kimball as well as another tool to help them identify in different areas of the county that are experiencing problems and to give them a better feel for it. This will be one element as of several that they will use to analyze the system. And I did make the comment in the paper that I was kind of reserving my judgment on the entire thing until we get their independent analysis back. But I did say, obviously, there are enhancements that need to be made. We just don't know what those enhancements entail at this point in time. Item F on the agenda. A month or two back, we came before you in regards to the transfer station, and a informal proposal had been floated by us to have a transloading agricultural lime station there at that site. And I told you at the time that we would need a detailed site plan, we would need a detailed lease and other items on this, as well as the property would need to be rezoned. Those items are still being worked on. However, the rezoning of the site, we went ahead and applied to the city to rezone the property to make it consistent to what the other areas of the landfill are in terms of industrial classification. So that's in the works. We will still yet bring back to you the detailed site plan, the lease, any EPA considerations, the entire package on that. That's just an FYI on the rezoning. Item G, the Animal Control Advisory Board. In your packet, your weekly information packet, we give you a committee compensation, basically about how the committee came about through different actions of the board and different meetings, and basically the composition of the board and how it's been amended and altered through time has been basically just by a motion and vote of the board, not a resolution or not an ordinance or something more formal that puts it into place. Since this came up in the last meeting about the Animal Control Advisory Board in terms of appointments, and there's an appointment on this board, wanted to put that on here. And basically, I know there was some discussion in the last meeting about some desire of a few board members to expand that or whether to leave it as is. There wasn't a general consensus, so I thought I'd put that on the agenda and ask the board, do you want staff and myself to explore expanding the Animal Control Advisory Board, or what type of direction would you like to give us?
Mr. Chairman, if it's proper to do so, I'd like to make a motion that we expand the board by one member.
I second the motion, Mr. Chairman, if that's...
Any discussion?
I would like to ask, why do you want to expand the number? What is the rationale for expanding the number?
Criteria is that the board is made up of some very excellent people right now. And I believe that based on the last meeting and the interest of a citizen to potentially get on that board, and her having since sent in her information requesting to be on the board, I think that she will actually be another voice on there that if we were to displace, like coming up before us now, Melanie Bryan a little bit is up for reappointment. We don't want to get rid of Melanie. And there's a Dr. Willis, who this board really needs to praise because she was wonderful on that board. She is now leaving, and we have another doctor who, in this case, it would be Beth Sanchez. She's not a veterinarian, and we need a veterinarian on that board. I just think that this would be kind of another opinion that would be very valuable to augment that board. And hopefully the board would take it as a compliment that somebody has spent so much time and effort in this with this animal control ordinance, that we would be able to actually take advantage of that and get some new ideas and fresh opinions.
I agree with that 100%, that Beth would be an excellent addition to that board. She has already demonstrated her commitment, her knowledge, her determination. I just am concerned about a precedent that we are establishing, so anytime.
But it's not a
Wait a
precedent.
minute, you would be adding a person, you would be adding to the size of this board so that you could have a particular person on there. Now, if I have a person that I think would be very, very good on the Development Commission Board, and there are many out there that would serve well on the Development Commission Board, we have always said we would wait until an opening came and fill that position with that person, that qualified person. But what we're saying now is when we have a person we feel is very qualified, we will just expand the number of our board so that we can incorporate that person. And where would we stop? I mean, her husband would also be great on that board. Should we expand it by 2?
Well, I'm going to say no, but at the same time, this is not precedent. According to what Scott had said and what was discussed at the last meeting, is this has happened before. And in fact, with the Animal Control Advisory Board, it has happened. And so it's not a new precedent. I just think with everything going on and everything that's before that board and the likelihood that we are going to do something, hopefully, very meaningful and significant in the way of animal control from public safety as well as a shelter, I just think that this new voice would be very, very valuable.
Did you finish, Mr. Gary?
Yes, and I'm not questioning the value, Tom. I'm just questioning the precedent of increasing the size
personal.
of the board. No, I agree 100%. She would be excellent.
Lynn, Mr. James,
I
and
second the
Liz.
motion.
We've already got a second, Reverend.
Mhm.
We've got a second. We'd have a discussion now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Garrett's covered the things I would have said, but also that won't it create a situation where you have an even number board for vote purposes? That's all I've got, Mr. Chairman.
Perhaps, but, you know, I've been on that board for gosh knows how many years. Michelle, how many times have we had it really be just a tie? I think it's a rare thing. Most times, the board kind of feels the same way. There are different opinions, but I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Mr. James?
Mr. Chairman, we have her, because, and I think she needs to be on there now, Commissioner Garris, because she is representing the thing that we need to get together with the animal rights people and divided. And one of the most important things in Pitt County right now is safety with dogs, controlling dogs. And we might as well face it. Not only now, but it's been that way forever. When I was a little boy, it was that way. You let a dog bite somebody, and it's a bad situation. So anytime we can get anybody on there that's got some ideas and is willing to push it, and they are, we need them. And I'm not kidding you. And we don't need it. If I knew she could be put on that 6 months, it could be 2 years before an opportunity would come. And that's the reason I certainly support what he has said. And we need a person on there that will push, so to speak, and it might not be, need a little maybe diversion of some competition and to make things happen, so to speak. And I really think it would be good.
Ms. Ward?
I agree with the thoughts of Commissioner Garris in the sense that I'm not sure, but I don't remember since I've been on the board that a commissioner, that we as commissioners have recommended to change the makeup of the board. Sometimes the boards would request that they needed another person or another at-large person or whatever. And I think it would set a precedent for other boards down the road. It would not prevent them from seeking out another person. And it would, if it has to do with the person, I'd rather for it to be a recommendation for an additional person, period, and not a specific one, because I totally agree, because I said that I think to our last meeting, that I thought that Ms. Sanchez would make an excellent member, and I thought that she would bring new ideas and new thoughts to the board for them to consider. But just like we say here all the time, all of us have one vote, and on the board, all of the people there have one vote. And I just, that's how I feel about it.
You know, everybody's trying to do what thinks the right thing. When you have a catalyst in something that is the mover, the general contractor, it's good when you're trying to implement something. But I'm also of the mindset that Jimmy said, and Mr. Webb, that you don't change policies to accomplish one thing, but why not have a compromise and put it on there for one term then? That's just showing that out. Melvin?
Until we get,
Until we get her
Like-
expertise, and then, of course, there'll be some more vacancies then, and you can
Later on.
fill it in with that.
That would be an
That's an
excellent
idea.
compromise.
Well,
because
could
then
agree.
Excuse me. Let's get Melvin, and then we'll come back, y'all.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I certainly think Ms. Sanchez has done a tremendous, superior job in gathering the information, factual information to present to us. You know, we said at the last meeting that, at least I made a statement that she be part as a consultant of the group, being involved in making the decision that is going to be brought back to this board. I certainly think that is good. But I want to ask Scott this, that it's been mentioned that establishing a president, and that this would not be an establishment of a president in terms of we've done this before.
I think you've gone both ways. In 2005, you had a recommendation from the Animal Control Advisory Board to expand the composition of the board. But I think you've also had in that material I gave you, I think where you as a board have done that on your own accord as well. I think it's gone both ways.
Now, having said that, I certainly would, having heard you just make that statement, that I would think that we could certainly apply that to Ms. Sanchez and have her part of the board. And I think our chairman just made a recommendation that we can do that on a one-term basis. So I'm in agreement with that after hearing your factual
Well, that
statement.
one term, Mr. Chairman, would be for 4 years. I think we need to have it straightened out for 4 years.
3 years.
3 years.
Yes.
But I'm for, she needs to be on that board. I can tell you that.
Mr. Chairman, since
Okay.
I made the motion, what I'd like to do, and I've already conferred with Eugene, I'd like to change my motion and
All
do
right,
what you
let's, you the second?
Yes.
Withdraw your second, withdraw your motion.
Withdraw it, but I'll
Okay,
say,
I'd like to change my motion then to make it a one-term appointment, at which time there will be opportunities for her to potentially stay on if she wants to, or if not, then the board can go back to its original number. Right now, this would be a crucial time with all the stuff that's going on. I just think it's well worth having an
So
additional.
Tom, your
voice.
motion is for an additional member for one term.
Correct,
All right, and then, of course, this board can appoint that person.
correct.
You really got two deals, as I
Right.
see it. All right. Everybody heard the motion?
You second that?
now that, I want to go far, and you mean that.
Okay,
you're saying-
what would you like extra?
Yeah, but make sure she's the person, the extra person.
Well, I think we need to go this,
Second motion.
well, okay, I'll make the motion that Beth be the person that would
All
fill
right,
the
I'll
one.
second the motion then.
All right, so now we've got two motions.
Well,
No, well, let's back up, Gene, with yours. Sorry, I'm trying to tell you. Make your first motion.
Well, the first motion is that we make a one-term appointment.
Right.
And that it be for 1 year.
In discussion on that? If not, let's vote. All right, now, Tom.
My second motion would be, assuming I did pass, and my second motion would be that we go ahead and appoint Beth Sanchez to this new position.
second.
In discussion on that? Not, let's vote.
And if you want, Mr. Chairman, while we're on this, on page 119, that has to do with animal control reappointments.
All right. Anything you can do to help patients?
Well, I would like to go ahead and nominate or recommend that Melanie Bryant be reappointed.
Any other?
I'd also like to see Dr. Terry Is it Jeremy? Is that how you pronounce her name? Okay, have her appointed as the veterinary. Him, sorry.
All right, motion made and seconded for two people, for two different slots. In discussion? Not, let's vote.
I'm getting them confused with Katie.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I had just a couple other items as well as on
Excuse
manager's
us,
report.
Scott, go ahead.
Sorry. Calling this item H after the Animal Control Advisory Board composition. Just want to let you know our Public Information Officer, Kiera Jones, has been reelected to the President of the North Carolina City and County Communications Association. I believe this is her second year in this position. Also, want to let you know that our next meeting, your next meeting on April the 7th, we'll have a resolution coming before you that'll be entitled Crime Victims' Rights Week, April 6th through 7th. And the chairman is being asked to actually sign that resolution now prior to it, but want to let you know we do have that scheduled since it starts the day before the meeting begins. Let you know that's going to be executed. And then the last thing I'm kind of hesitant to announce or mention it, but I will, and that is kind of a precursor to the development of fiscal year 14-15 budget. Just kind of the big, maybe 100,000-foot view looking down. As we look at revenues versus expenditures in terms of new revenues available, when you take out the tax and tag scenario that is the one-time revenues that were available this year, trying to get an apples-to-apples comparison between base revenues for the current year we're in compared to base revenues the year we're going to go into, we have probably about a 1% growth in revenues. Now, compare that to the additional expenditures that are being requested, we're looking at 9 to 10% in total net additional expenditures. So that's the task ahead of me as I prepare a budget for you, but just want to kind of paint that picture for you. And it hasn't really been this far out in a long time, but that's what I'm faced up against in the county.
Get a little closer together.
Yes, no choice but to.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, as we were voting on the motion to establish Ms. Sanchez as a board member, I incorrectly hit the wrong button, and so I would like to vote affirmatively for that.
Clerk can take care of that for Mr. McLaughlin. Okay. What's next?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the items for consent.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, there was one correction to the minutes that was noted regarding, on page 14, regarding the motion on animal control. It was just clarifying that that no vote took place on one of the motions because the substitute motion had passed. And also on page 15, the suggestion had been made to denote the substitute motion rather than the motion. Just technical, but want to bring that to your attention.
It was recorded proper, but transcribed without denoting that it's a substitute motion. All right. Now we're ready for, have you made your motion, Bill?
Yes, I have.
Who seconded that?
Mr. Garris.
All right, you ready to vote?
I voted.
I did too.
You slow, Jimmy. One thing I want to say about, I voted for the consent agenda, but item number 8 on that consent agenda, I want to challenge the sheriff. Sheriff, these notes say here that we use the Motorola service contract to do that for you. You know, with all these problems we've been having Motorola with that, so please be apprised of that. That's my personal feeling about it. You too. Thank you. Okay. Item for decision.
Mr. Chairman, under items for decision, your first item is the proposed statewide legislative goals for Pitt County for the short session coming up for this year for 2014. And if I may, can we ask the attorney maybe just to run through these real quick?
Yes, thank you. The short session the General Assembly will reconvene for the short session on Wednesday, May 14th at 12 noon. So in anticipation of that, we have solicited goals from each of the department heads for our legislative goals for this upcoming session. And so in your package, you have a list that includes 9 goals. 5 of them you have seen before and are carryover from previous years. The first being general revenue protection, and that's to assure that we preserve our existing local revenue base and do not add any undue exemptions that would erode our ad valorem property tax base. The second is to reinstate ADM and lottery funds for school construction. You've talked about that for several years, and with education being the #1 priority in Pitt County government, adequate funding is critical for an effective system of public education. We're asking the General Assembly to continue or to reinstate the ADM and lottery funds. To illustrate, Pitt County lost $9,386,903 in ADM and lottery funds since 2009. And so that's something we want to continue to keep our eye and attention on. The third you've heard before is to oppose unfunded mandates. And this board has always and consistently opposed unfunded mandates and shifts of state responsibility to counties where the state has not had adequate funding for a state responsibility. Fourth one that you've heard before is transportation funding. Pitt County continues to oppose any efforts to shift the state's existing responsibility for funding transportation, road construction, and maintenance projects to the counties. And then I'll skip the next two and group what you've heard before, which is collective bargaining. Pitt County has consistently opposed legislation authorizing local governments to enter into collective bargaining agreements. And so those are the 5 carryovers from last year and actually from previous years before then. And then you have 4 new goals that have been suggested by your department heads this year. The first one is the Department of Transportation, or DOT, responsibility for subdivision streets. The board will recall earlier, or last year, when you reviewed the recommendations of the Subdivision Streets Committee, you modified your ordinance and you enacted a policy to address the maintenance of subdivision roads. And in your recommendations, you directed staff to approach the General Assembly to discuss legislation that would allow the Department of Transportation to accept subdivision roads earlier than the current density requirements allow. And so, as it is now, the Department of Transportation has certain criteria before they will accept maintenance of a subdivision road that is dedicated for public right-of-way. And this goal would begin the discussions with the General Assembly and the Department of Transportation to see if there are other methods to assure maintenance of subdivision roads by the Department of Transportation earlier than is currently allowed. I will say to you that this isn't one that I think would be embraced by the Department of Transportation up front, but if you adopted it as a goal, would certainly begin some conversation in that area.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment on that? I'm part of the TAC. I can assure you the DOT would be willing to adopt it, but they need more funding. That's the dirty little secret. Regardless of what we think about the DOT and all the jokes that some people make about, one person working and 3 standing there, the fact is, for what they're charged to do, they don't have enough funding. And that's really the big holdup.
So that would be a new goal this year if this board chooses to adopt that.
Did you finish, Madam Attorney?
On that one I have, and then there are 3 other that I'd like to briefly mention. That is to restore funding to the Solid Waste Management Trust Special Fund for recycling grants. Pitt County has taken very smart and effective advantage of grants through that fund, which is no longer funded. So as this is a budget year in the short session where they will consider matters that are affecting their budget, if this board adopts this goal, then the county would seek support of the Association of County Commissioners and on its own seek to restore funding for that grant line at the state level to accomplish some of the projects that Pitt County has successfully accomplished with those funds in the past. Some of the things that we have done in Pitt County with those funds is fund the shingle recycling program, the feed the bin program, the electronics recycling program, the C&D recycling program, and without that line funded, we will not make the progress at the same rate and pace that we made in the past.
Are you talking about Southwest Bypass?
I'll talk about that now.
Oh, I thought you, excuse me, go ahead.
So that was to restore funding for the Solid Waste Management Trust Fund. The next one on your list is the Southwest Bypass financing, and we put that on there. This is something that manager has made the board aware of in the past, and this was an effort initiated by some municipalities in order to advance fund the Southwest Bypass because funding they feared funding would not exist in later years as funding mechanisms were revised. So in order to make that happen, the municipalities have engaged bond counsels and other experts to recommend proposed language to change the general statutes to allow the municipalities to fund through revenue anticipation notes a highway project. Pitt County's goal is not necessarily an endorsement of those legislative proposals, but rather, if legislative changes are sought, we would like clarification that the municipality have the further authority to finance those portions of the bypass that are not within their municipal limits. So in other words, under the current law, if there were changes made to the grant anticipation note statutes, then, for example, the city of Greenville, the town of Ayden, and Pitt County, all three would have to jointly fund this project. And if one did not want to, the other two would likely not be able to proceed. In this legislative goal, it would make clear that a lead municipality could fund a portion of it outside of its municipal jurisdiction with the consent of the county or with the consent of the other municipality. So all parties would still be at the table, but the financing would be such that it would enable one municipality, if they so chose to pursue that, to do it without being held up by another municipality that might not want to do that. So long as they, in the financing end, so long as they had their consent to the project. Questions about that?
Am I missing something? I thought conversation on that southwest one is, as you said here, but then in the finality, there'd be a guarantee by the state to save you harmless.
That's the issue. There is no guarantee. That's part of the reason that the county was not, from a staff perspective, was not really wanting to come to the table to recommend to you to sign on the dotted line that you fund a $250 million project, that there's no guarantee that the grant anticipation note will be paid for by DOT funds, because that's based upon state gas taxes that are collected, and also DOT and the General Assembly's appropriation of those dollars. We've structured this goal to make sure that it's not in conflict with number 4, the transportation funding. We want the county to continue to oppose, like Janice said, any efforts to shift the state's responsibility for transportation projects.
They are direct opposed to each other,
Well,
Scott.
this one allows the cities, right now the city doesn't have the legal authority to build in the county's jurisdiction. This will allow them to do it, and it would also allow them to finance it through, like Janice said, through the grant anticipation note, but it would not involve Pitt County government.
The cities have long been in the road business, the counties have not.
But laying a little farther, where did I get that about saving harmless from, Scott? Is some meeting you had?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, that binding guarantee is part of the proposed legislative changes that the municipalities have suggested in order to be able to do a grant anticipation note at all. You may recall the county's bond counsel was concerned that a state appropriation was not a binding guarantee. And so, and that would then not make a grant anticipation note a feasible financing mechanism.
Short session, what's the probability of having this done, all this done? Or part of it, I mean, whatever.
The Southwest bypass financing, I believe they would do as a technical change, and if there was support, could likely happen. I think the Department of Transportation goal, my sense is that we could begin conversation, but I'm not sure how far it would go unless, like Commissioner Colson says, there is some support from the Department of Transportation to make that happen.
The funding, if it were by the cities and the counties, would be probably 10 years, wouldn't it?
To go ahead and jumpstart this project?
Yes.
No, I think they're talking about two to 3 years. I mean, you're talking about immediate compared to.
No, I mean about paying the money back, Scott.
No, that would be done probably over a 5 or 6 year period, because it's going to take a number of years to build the project if it's jumpstarted and done immediately.
Yeah, my point is that if it's going to be a group of years down the way, and the state doesn't want to get into it, but they might save you harmless 10 years down or 8 years down, why not have that in your request.
Mr. Chairman, something else that I've wondered about, and I asked in the TAC the last time that we met, was that if such a thing were to happen, and the municipalities and county borrowed money, we're not going to get it free. Would the DOT pay back the interest? And the answer was likely not. So if we're talking about $250 billion, $280 million, even at the low interest rates today, that adds up to a lot of money every single year.
Yeah,
And
you-
if I'm not mistaken, I thought they said it was like a 5-year deal, but I may be wrong on that. But I
Didn't mean to
thought that's what they
belabor the
said.
point.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I think the point on this is that after a certain amount of time, if we don't act soon, that loop funding's going away permanently. And with the new restructure, and Tom, I'm sure you know more than I do, but on it, but with the new structure, those loop projects are going to move
They've
west of
already
95 and east of 77.
They've
So
already
we
said
got
that.
to act. But I think the purpose of the way they're structuring this, at least from what I understand, it would be, if I'm not mistaken, we would be more of a pass-through, and the company that they're doing these bonds through, or for lack of a better term, would be receiving of the interest, not the counties or the state. It was just, they'd be basically fronting the money to get the project done, taking advantage of those bonds and getting paid back by the state, what the state enters into the agreement to pay them back. But if we don't start construction in the next couple of years, Southwest Bypass is not going to happen.
Is there any further instructions for the county attorney on her
I
presentation?
have one more, just to mention that we might consider amending to take out the ADM. The Association of Commissioners has done this because the ADM came out of the corporate tax, and the way the corporate tax has been restructured through the tax reform, it's gone. It's not going to happen. We're not going to get ADM back. And at our Board of Directors meeting in Raleigh, we decided to take ADM out of it because we felt like we could get more traction with the legislature by not poking the bear on ADM, something they're very agitated about when we talk about it, and to try to get back up at least to the 40% on the lottery funds, which would be a bigger win for us anyway.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
you're talking about a straight stretch just about from the beginning out here to on the other side of Aden. The only way that we're gonna do that is to have a toll to beginning and at the end. Raleigh's doing it now, several places. They're putting up the toll roads. But that brings in a lot of money. We found out that when the hospital, DOT, and City of Greenville went together and they built this road out here. Remember that some years ago? They built this road that's completed now. But the county of Pitt, if you go to town, you, like he said, there's $500 million, it'll destroy you. If the DOT won't come in, and they're not gonna come in there. So you better have something there like the Wake County has done, Raleigh, that you can get that money if you want to do it. And there's no question where the roads are going. They're already going there, Tom, of course, that. But I'm telling you, you're gonna have to look at other ways, whether you like it or not. And that's the sure way of it getting paid. And then who uses it, what they do. All you gotta do is go anywhere. Of course, I know you'll say, oh, you don't want to do that, but if you're gonna do it, you're gonna.
They're going to start.
Okay,
charging
Madam
on the
Attorney,
miles
continue on
drive,
down.
GPS.
There's just one last one, and that has to do with a relook by the General Assembly at the Animal Control Transportation Standards. Currently, under the North Carolina Administrative Code and the regulations, boxes that carry dogs must be air-conditioned with a forced cool, operable air conditioning, forced cool air cooling system, and a forced air heating system. Those regulations have not been consistently applied across the state. In some jurisdictions, as in ours, it's acceptable to have a fan, which is a much less expensive option. So we would like to seek clarification on that regulation so that it would have less of a cost burden on counties while still assuring the appropriate, humane, and right temperature control when transporting animals.
What's the pleasure of the board at this time?
I want to ask you a question,
All right,
Mr. Chairman.
Dave, excuse me. Good day.
Is the issue concerning North Carolina Fast and those rural pagers been satisfied completely?
I'm sorry, say
No.
again,
I
Mr.
said
Ham?
the issues concerning North Carolina Fast and Social Service and those pagers, that the rural fireman was having problems communicating on, have those two issues completely been satisfied completely?
NC Fast has not. The state is still rolling out that computer system for the 100 different Department of Social Services. The radio and paging system that was discussed earlier, no, that is still ongoing, and that's why we had the report from Phil Dickerson, and why the county's hired the engineer who'll be on site tomorrow to start working on that.
Did that answer your question, Dave? Did that answer your question?
Well, the answer is no, from what he just told me, is that
It was
right?
half and half. About 50-50.
The radio and paging would not be a legislative issue right now. That's a local Pitt County issue. NC Fast with the computer program, that's a state issue, but not really a legislative issue either. It's more of an issue with the Department of Health and Human Services in Raleigh.
Mr. Garris, I overlooked you a while ago. Excuse me, please.
Yes, I was going to make a motion that we approve these legislative goals with the exception of removing ADM in item number 2.
I second it.
Ready to vote? Okay.
Mr.
Now-
Chairman, just to let you know, we will be arranging a legislative breakfast for the short session with the delegation and you, probably in the month of April, I believe we said.
All right, sir. Now, Janice,
Mr.
well, we
Chairman.
got that. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, I was just going to make a motion on
Please
the
do.
next item.
Go ahead,
We've
Beth.
had this information to see, and the extension permit meets all the requirements that we have, right, Mr. Rhodes?
Yes, ma'am.
Then I make a motion that we approve the
Second motion,
extension.
second, ready to vote. Sorry, James.
That's good.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Let's see, James, where you up here at?
And you've already done 3. No, have you done 3 yet?
No, well, no.
No, all right, Glenn.
Yeah.
Thank you. We've rehashed, we've gone over this issue more than once with Phil. Does anyone have a motion?
I move that we approve it.
Second.
I second it.
Ready to vote?
The second.
May I make a quick introduction?
Absolutely.
This is Andrew Parker. He works with McDavid and Associates, and he'll be working with us as we go through this process.
Good.
Well, thank you.
We'll let you talk next time, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
I'm okay, not talking.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. James?
can I ask one question on this project?
Wait a minute.
Andrew.
You need to ask Scott.
The engineer, if we could,
Phil.
in the notification that went to the property owners that your firm sent out, it talked about the project cost being covered 97% by CDBG funds. I'm just curious where the other 3% would come from.
Kennewick.
Okay.
That the other money will cost abandonment of septic tanks and the cost to hook up each individual home.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. That it, Scott?
Yes,
You
sir.
got that? All right, Noel?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, in keeping with the fiscal year budget, 13-14, for the fleet management program, we had buy one new ambulance remount two. We've already bought the one. We're now presenting to you tonight a contract to you with Select Customs Apparatus out of Fountain for the remount of 2 ambulances, one going to Farmville, one going to Belle Arthur. This was presented to the Oversight Committee back on March 13th. They made a recommendation to accept.
Have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Noel. All right, number 5, under 11.
Oh, I didn't vote. Thank you. I'm just looking at the GUC thing.
This is, number 5 is nominations to the Greenville Utilities Commission. You have a recommendation by their board chair for Joel Butler to be the Pitt County's nomination to the city of Greenville. He will then make the final decision on this appointment.
So moved.
Oh, yeah. I second that.
In discussion? All right, let's vote. I think it would be fitting, though. We read through sometimes these people that apply for these various and different positions, and we have a lot of good candidates with great backgrounds. In this particular one, it was today. With 33 years of experience, I think it'd be good if we had a letter coming from you, Scott, thanking them for applying for this and to reapply for somewhere where they can contribute to us. Thanks, sir.
David,
All right.
we need to vote.
Now,
David
number
does.
7.
David,
Do we have a
Mr. Chairman, I
motion on
make a
that?
motion that we reappoint Jack Cody, Jim Cox, Melissa Larson, Jennifer Smith, Marlo Blake, and Sue Butler to the Pitt County Child Fatality Prevention Team.
Any other appointments? Motion. Let's vote. All right, number 8.
Greatest appointments to the EMS Oversight Committee as a liaison. This will be a non-voting member. This is on page 133 of your packet. And
Make a
Gary
motion, we
Whitehurst.
appoint Gary Whitehurst as the non-voting member of the EMS non-emergency provider.
Second.
No other ones, let's vote. All right, I believe we need a closed session.
Yes, it has been suggested that this board go into closed session under North Carolina General Statute 143, 318.11A6 to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, or conditions of initial employment of an individual public officer or employee, or prospective public officer or employee, or to hear or investigate a complaint, charge, or grievance by or against an individual public officer or employee. Just need a motion.
Motion to go into closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, let's vote. Tom.
You got to really go in closed session, right?
You don't have arthritis.
Madam Attorney, we are now back in open session. Is there anything to report from previous work?
No, sir.
Mr. Gash, you got a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, vote. Thank you. Appreciate y'all.